Hello?
Hello, Jughead. This is Archie. Come over right away. It's a matter of life or death.
Oh, relax, Archie.
Attention, all true believers. Marvel Comics is on the air.
A friend of the unfortunate, enemy of criminals. In reality, Dan Garrett, a rookie patrolman, loved by everyone but suspected by none of being the Blue Beetle.
Boys and girls, your attention, please. Presenting a new exciting radio program featuring the thrilling adventures of an amazing and incredible personality. Faster than an airplane, more powerful than a locomotive, impervious to bullets.
Up in the sky, look!
It's a bird, it's a plane, it's Superman!
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's one of your hosts, Christopher, a.k.a. the Bronze Age Nerd, and I'm joined by my remote location reporter here,
Mr. Magoo.
Bigby McFly, the comic guy, who is in a hotel room in an undisclosed location, reporting on the war-torn Eastern Front.
And I forgot my reading glasses, so I'll be squinting at everyone.
But hey, I'm glad you're able to join us. For those that don't know, Bigby's on kind of a work trip, basically, and maybe that way for a couple shows, right?
It's possible it could be on and off for a while now. Yeah, but it's good money, so that's important.
Hey, that's great, man. Those comics don't afford themselves. But yeah, so I just want to let everybody know there is a couple things real fast before we get into the show. First of all, we are streaming in a couple different locations. We're streaming on my channel on Bronze Age Nerd, like I said a couple seconds ago. Hopefully you still remember that. We're streaming over on Mr. Magoo's channel. That's Bigby and McFly, the comic guy. And we're streaming over on the EXP network of channels as well, the great comic book streaming network that you can go subscribe to. Links are in the description below for all of those channels. If you're curious, we are changing up our format a little bit. So the way the timing is going to work here is a little different. We're trying something out based on some feedback and kind of what we're seeing in our data. We are going to discuss the main topic, which is this week. It's a great topic that Bigby had suggested, like so many of our great topics are Bigby's ideas. We're talking about comic books that are based on toy lines, which I think should be really fun. We've got a lot of great toy lines we can talk about and comic book lines too, of course. But we're going to talk about that. The only thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about the new segment we added last week, which is where we talk about like comic books we're reading and movies and stuff like that we've watched. And also just a couple of important quick notes. And then right after that, we'll get into the topic, and then we'll do all our news and we'll do our community art. We'll do that after the main topic to make sure we have plenty of time. We're not rushing that topic. And anybody who tunes in because of the thumbnail, hey, you're going to get to that topic that much quicker. So hopefully you folks enjoy that. If you don't, or if you do or whatever, just let us know in the comments or in the chat because we'd love to hear from you. Real fast, let's go through and say hello to everybody who has joined into the chat. We got Derek coming in first this week, which is that's an upset. I think that's happened like one other time, so Derek's really kind of in the hunt now. Richard.
Am I the only one hearing that?
I'm hearing that. Bronze, your mic.
Yeah.
That scratched.
Don't worry, folks. It's just the demons.
Yeah. Sounded like cymbals and percussion instruments. I was wondering if it was me because I'm remote and I'm set up in a weird setup. So I wish it was me. So anyway, as Bronze is getting things fixed, he's saying hello to everybody. So I see Kamikaze, Actual Dracula. Thanks for being here tonight. Comic Tropes. Good to see you there, Chris.
All right, how's that? Is that better?
There we go. He's back.
Does my
Much better.
mic sound clearer now?
It does. You sounded like percussion instruments. It sounded like cymbals and all kinds of stuff.
Interesting. Sorry about that. I don't know how much of that Bigby was nice enough to recap because I couldn't hear when I was switching over. But I was just
got
saying that
people I was saying hi to, so you can go ahead and recap saying hi.
I just wanted to make sure and shout out to Comic Tropes. Had a great show earlier. I didn't quite get to catch his David Nakayama interview that he had as part of his live show on Comic Tropes After Dark, which I'm going to go back and rewatch. But I caught some of his news segment and his comics he'd picked up, and great show. Go check his show out on his channel. And I know he was just at Emerald City Comic Con too, so I'm sure there's some recap of that. I think he was on a panel there, which Bigby and I both got to see Chris over on a panel at Rose City Comic Con. That was a lot of fun. So
very informative. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. We got Chad Cave in the house. What's up? How's it going, Chad? Some of us are squinting back. Absolutely. I'm way past due for some new glasses myself, for kind of everyday glasses I wear for mostly reading, but it's bad. If you see me this weekend at the Frankenstein Comic Swap, which by the way, I'll be there on Saturday as a vendor. Bigby, are you not going now because of the trip you had to do?
I'm gonna try to go. I probably won't be doing a lot of anything other than seeing people and interviewing folks, but
yeah, that's fair.
So, but I will try to
maybe maybe you could do some trading too or whatever, like some swapping or something.
Yeah, I might be able to do something like that.
But yeah, we'll be there this weekend. If you see me, there's a really good chance if you want me to read anything, I probably won't be able to. Past time. Actual Dracula in the house. What is up, Actual Dracula? Actual Dracula, does Canada or province by province, do they do the whole daylight savings time thing? I'm curious about that. I'm curious if you got to deal with that, because I figure like that's got to be bad. You kind of lose an hour, right? Like of your prime time there. What's up, Kamikaze? Always good to see you. Thanks everybody for pointing that out there. Yeah, man, they just come through. The tinfoil I weave in there just kind of catches them all. That is so weird. Yeah, it 95 to 99% of the time this microphone works just fine. Every once in a while something weird happens. I can either confirm or deny that Bigby is in North Korea.
Yes, the urine soaked background given away.
Hey, Four Color Commentary, a bunch of cool comics and toy fans in here. Yes, and yourself included, or else you wouldn't be here, and we love to see it. So yeah, just kind of gonna hit a couple notes real fast before we dive into what we've been kind of consuming media wise. Again, we are going to be at Frankenstein Comic Swap. That's in Portland, Oregon. Takes place in the Lloyd Center Mall. It's a one day only, so it's only on Saturday, March 15th. So come check it out. I'm going to be sharing a booth with Dan's X-Men Comics and QWERTY Comics. The three of us are going to have all kinds of different stuff, so we'll have a good variety for you. There are 100 or so comic vendors, usually over 2 floors. It's really kind of massive. So
it'd be amazing if you're looking for comics, and it's a really good place to find some great deals. And our buddy Dr. Plagueis will be there too.
Yep. And point of fact, a lot of people that you might know from chat. I know John Stout hangs out in here. I think he's going to be there this weekend. A few others, I'm sure. We usually see, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 people that we know in the community, I feel like on average. Sometimes more, sometimes less, but yeah. Okay. So you guys do, oh man. So you lost an hour of nighttime. That's terrible. Or did you gain it on the back end? I don't know. Are you a nighttime vampire or a morning time vampire? I don't really know how that works for vampires.
So when I've got them, it's been in the evening. So I don't know.
Oh, did he start a channel?
Yes, he did. He did start a channel.
Oh, that's cool.
His show is called Paper and Plastic. And
I didn't know he did that.
yeah,
That's
he
cool.
co-hosts it with another guy. But yeah, he started a channel now.
Right on. I mean, to be fair, that's how most of us feel about it too.
Right.
Let's see what else was there. I will say this. Just want to thank everybody for the support. I did restart or kind of relaunch my series I do on comic speculation called Top 5 Not to Buy. It's kind of a send up or a take on all the hot comic lists. If you're not familiar with the show, where I basically pick 5 comic books from those lists that I think are just a terrible investment and you shouldn't go buy right now. The real joke of the show is that you shouldn't buy any comics that are on those lists. If you have those comic books and you're looking to buy and sell comics, you should probably sell them or hold on to them and just know that people like them. I don't know. But I wanted to thank everybody for going and watching that. I had really good positive reception and a lot more views than I normally would get for a video that I've been putting out recently for that. So I'm going to be coming back and doing those on a weekly basis. Next week's episode is going to be pretty interesting. I'm going to roll back in my booty cover of the week pick and try to make that part of that show as well, kind of at the end. So give some people something to stick around for at the end, if you know what I'm saying. And and also going to try to launch a second companion show to that where I kind of go through all the lists. It'd be a longer video, but I kind of go through each list and sort of show my quick reaction to each book. And I would do that kind of go through and you would see my first kind of reaction to it because I wouldn't look at the list beforehand, which I think is kind of a fun idea. I do want to give a shout out to House of Stein. If you guys don't know Ben Stein, not the actor that was in Ferris Bueller's Day Off and all that kind of stuff, but a different Ben Stein. He's the House of Stein over on Instagram. He does the top 10. He was the original not the original guy. He was the guy that did the CBSI Hot 10 for pretty much 95% of its lifetime. He now does his own list on a live show. And actually I messaged him. I'm like, dude, do you post this list anywhere? And thankfully he kind of started doing something based on what I kind of, I guess, spurred him on to do. I think this is pretty cool. And I'm just going to share this real fast. He posted up his top 10. So he did it on his Instagram. This is his account. And so you can kind of go through and see the top 10 he picks. I've always been a fan of his picks. That list has always been a little bit more interesting to me because it seems less motivated by, I'll just say speculator politics to me than some of the other lists that are out there. And there's some overlap for sure, but there's some great comic books on there. It's kind of a fun thing to look at. So that's one of the lists that I'll be looking at when I do that new show I'm talking about. So anyways, thanks everybody for supporting that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, that was really cool to see you getting the views. You were pleasantly surprised.
Yes. Gained a couple subscribers, which is fun. I mean, I always take that as a sign of health. I've been kind of steadily losing and then kind of slowly gaining and then losing and slowly gaining subscribers.
So I was looking, you're getting close to what are you close to pushing over, aren't you? Over that number?
I mean, I've got to get if I get about 100 more subscribers, a little less than that, I'll break 5,000. So,
that's right. Get them there, guys. Come on.
Yeah, I appreciate it. The other thing I want to mention, I should have mentioned this when I was talking about Frankenstein. If you come out and visit me and want to pick anything up, 10% of anything I make, and this is actually going to be true anytime you see me selling like on YouTube, on Instagram, like, that kind of stuff, or at a live show like I'll be doing this Saturday, 10% of everything I make, and that's, I guess, gross, we'll call it, from the sales generated, I'm actually going to put into a special fund for Heroes for Heroes. And I want to be clear about what that means. I'm not directly donating it to Heroes for Heroes. I'm going to use it for things like administrative fees. The biggest thing I want to do is start covering shipping for people. And I don't know that I'll make enough money over the course of the time I'm doing this between now and Heroes for Heroes, which is coming probably around May. We haven't quite settled down the date yet, but that's coming soon.
Right.
Some shipping will be covered, basically, is the upshot there. So if you want to get some comic books from me and you're buying them anywhere that you see me selling comic books, just know that until further notice, that's what I'm going to be doing, is taking 10% and putting into that fund. I might also use that stuff for like shipping from artists for commissions that we do, or things like maybe getting some commissions done, or if I have somebody who's willing to donate stuff but they can't afford to get it shipped, those kinds of things.
Subsidizing.
Yeah, exactly. I really want to be able to give back to that, so that's kind of just something I decided to do. And if I make $100, great, we'll do $10. If I make $1,000, great, we'll do $100. We'll see how it goes. So
yeah.
So yeah, I rambled on for longer than I expected. Big B, have you been reading, watching, or doing anything fun with any content out there?
See, I only watched one movie last week. I watched The Gorge, which was really, really good. Enjoyed that a lot.
Nice.
Had some cool twists to it. I've been watching my series, Invincible, Harley Quinn, and I started watching Daredevil. Really enjoyed the first 2 episodes of that. So excited I'm gonna miss this while I'm working. I can't watch any of that content. So
yeah, that's unfortunate.
And then I've been addicted to some true crime stuff. On YouTube. I've been watching for a long time now. I've been watching. There's a channel called That Chapter, and I've been addicted to that. Watching that guy.
Nice.
So,
very quick shout outs. I know Awesome Sauce. You can't see me highlighting your comment, but we wanted to say hello to you real fast. I'm just going through and highlighting some of the other comments while we talk. Thanks for all the kind words, everybody. So yeah, I think a lot of overlap with you because I watched both episodes of Daredevil. I'm caught up on Harley Quinn, which I think is like through 8 episodes or whatever of the new season 5.
right.
That's been good. I think it's probably a little better than last season so far, which is nice. Invincible has been amazing.
Yes.
I think a lot of
people. That last episode was so good.
Yeah, well, and oh man, I guess that's a spoiler. The actor who plays a character who appears at the end of the most recent episode was really fun to see, is what I'll say. Very cool considering, kind of the lineage of the other cast and stuff and kind of what they've done together.
The background, the history that they share together.
Yes. Yes, there's kind of a poetic justice to that, which is really cool to see. No, I really liked Invincible. I think most people probably want to hear us talk about Daredevil. And don't worry, we won't spoil what I know. A lot of people probably haven't gotten to it yet. I actually just watched both episodes last night and this morning, basically. So it took me a while to get to it. So I totally understand. I'll just say I think it's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it a lot. Some people were complaining about the special effects in the first episode. I didn't have a problem with them.
Oh, really? Okay. I don't even know. Like during like one of the big fights or something? Is that kind of what they were talking about?
During the very first, Daredevil scene, people were not. Some of my friends were saying that they didn't think it looked very good. So, but
I didn't
thought
have a problem with that. Yeah. I think some of the fight choreography, which I mean, that's not a spoiler. There's a fight in Daredevil. Oh my gosh. I think that was really kind of what I expected.
A hallway fight. No, that was really good.
Yeah. I understand a little bit. I guess I kind of understand. Yes. Yeah. What you guys are talking about. There's some rooftop CGI that I guess maybe is a little shaky, but
that's what they were talking about. Yeah, but I overall it was not detracting from the show to me.
They almost could have went like full Frank Miller there and kind of done it in shadow, and it would have looked pretty cool too.
Right,
like foreground shadow, whatever you would call that, I guess. Where the light sources where they're illuminated from behind is basically what I'm trying to say.
Mike Mignola.
Yeah. So the one thing I'll say, and this, I think this is the thing I'm safe to say, unless you're one of those people who says a trailer counts as spoilers, which I kind of don't agree with, but hey, whatever. Uh, it's really obvious from the trailer. You can tell that we're doing a Kingpin Mayor Fisk storyline. Like that's in all the media. So I'm comfortable talking about just that part of it. For a lot of reasons, I think that's a very poignant thing to be talking about right now, and a very interesting timing of that. That's all I'll really say about it. It's just fun to explore. So yeah.
Yeah, I've heard some comparisons, but
Yeah.
don't want to delve too deeply into that.
No, not at all. But I mean, I think no matter what your beliefs are, I think it's interesting either way, probably.
Right.
To see some parallels there. And yeah, no, I'm excited. I can't wait for the third season. I will say, or for the third episode, I will say, I think the second episode was a little slower. That's fine, because I mean, it's a show. I don't expect every episode to be a banger. And also, if that episode, they released 2 at once, if they released that second episode and we had to wait a week and that's all we got, and then we had to wait another week, that probably would have been worse. So I'm kind of glad they did that.
I dipped out for a second there. I heard you said, I will say, and then it just dipped out.
Oh,
sorry.
No, it's okay. I was just talking about the pacing of the episodes, basically.
I thought it was interesting, if you count the word, how many times did they say the word punish or punishment or punishing, or a lot in those first 2 episodes?
There was a lot of that.
I was like, wow, setting something up.
There is definitely some interesting stuff going on. Yeah, with some of the cops. I'm trying to avoid too many spoilers. I think probably what we'll do is what we've done before, where we'll get maybe another episode under our belts. And go
the first 2 episodes. Kind of slowly take chunks of it. Yeah, we could do something like that.
Yeah, there's Michael Gandolfini. What is his character? There is some speculation on who he plays that I forgot. It's kind of a deep cut, if I'm not mistaken. Do you know who that is? It's the guy that's part of Fisk's campaign that kind of like speaks up a lot.
Oh, yeah, that says, doesn't always say the right thing too.
Well, he certainly says what Fisk wants to hear.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, there's some speculation on who he is. And I wish I could remember who it is. But I also wouldn't necessarily want to give it away, even if I did remember. I don't. Okay, so Awesome Sauce has a theory on it, and I'll let Comic Strips read that. I won't say it out loud for people that don't want to hear the spoilers. Let's see what else. Daredevil. Comic books. I'm going to talk about comic books for just 1 minute, and then we'll quickly move on. We'll talk about comic books for a minute on this comic book show. I'm reading the Daniel Warren Johnson Transformers with my daughter. I'm kind of going back through and rereading it because she saw me reading it. She was kind of doing like her nighttime thing, and I was going to read her some Percy Jackson, which is what we're reading right now. And she comes in and she's like, "Is that a Transformers comic?" Because she's super into Transformers right now. And I was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "It's probably a little, like, you're probably not going to like it because it's probably a little bit for older kids, kind of a thing." And she wanted me to read it to her, so I did, and she loved it.
Wow.
Yeah, so we've been reading that, and she thinks it's awesome. She thinks it's cool because, like, she likes like RC a lot, for example, and RC kind of appears earlier in this than like a lot of Transformer stuff, except for the newest animated movie. You have to wait a long time before you start to get some of the girl Transformers kind of involved, and so she's super excited about that. And RC's a badass warrior and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, she's loving that, and of course I'm enjoying rereading it because it's a great series. And I'm also in that same universe reading Void Rivals because I kind of had given up on that. Not given up. I just had moved on from the first couple issues. I went back to it and kind of read more of that. And it's still really good. I'm really liking it. So I think somebody in chat had been like, "Hey, stick with Void Rivals. It's pretty good." And I took them up on it, and yeah, I'm liking that a lot too. So
how much is it like? Because I've heard initially it was kind of introducing Transformers and G.I. Joe. Is it still really overlapping both titles?
There's I don't think there's any G.I. Joe overlap that I caught onto. There is Transformers overlap.
Okay.
Mostly in the form of, there's a couple significant cameos later on. There's a massive cameo that introduced the whole Energon universe with Skyfire basically is kind of in the first issue. That's on some of the covers. I don't think that's a big spoiler, but there's some really cool cameos like a few issues in too that are awesome. Oh, okay. So I'm not there yet. That's cool to hear. But yeah, there's a ton of because it's in space, obviously, and Cybertron is just like a planet people are aware of, right? Like it's part of the like cosmic landscape basically. And it's kind of doing a cool thing where I feel like it's world building a lot of sweet alien races and stuff. It's really cool.
That's so cool. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, I'm curious. I'm only like, because I've read the first 2 issues, and then I think I've read like the next 6 or 7 now, or I can't remember exactly which issue I'm on. I'm curious where the G.I. Joes come into play. So they usually use most animated movies characters. Okay. And I feel like it's the appropriate thing to talk about too with our topic tonight, as we're going to get ready to kind of pivot into that.
Yeah, there you
go. The last thing, I guess I watched a bunch of garbage TV like Yellowstone. I finally finished that, and then I'm watching 1923, which it's so funny seeing Harrison Ford in a TV show after watching him in Brave New World, because he acts 20 years younger in Brave New World than he does in 1923.
Right.
So that's just really strange. And the last thing is I'm actually reading a novel because my wife insisted. I'm reading a fantasy novel called Fourth Wing, which is really popular, I guess, by Rebecca Yarros. It's like dragon riders. So I started reading that and like, I don't know, maybe like 100 pages in or something. But
and how are you enjoying it? Is it good?
It's pretty good. It's got a little bit of a young adult feel to it in some ways. It's very much in that there's a lot of sex. There's a lot of like characters there's an actual sex happening, but characters are very like flirty with each other. But it also kind of makes sense because they're like these dragon riders that could die tomorrow in a dragon fight. And so they're kind of all, hedonistic basically, right? Trying to like live their life like there's no tomorrow. I keep calling it fourth meal to her, and I don't think she likes that very much. To answer your question, Jay. Yeah, that's kind of the other thing I'm reading.
That's cool.
Yeah.
It's always good to get some actual reading in.
Yeah, it's something I definitely missed reading novels. I did some audiobooks, and I think I read Project Hail Mary, which if you're not familiar with that, it's a novel by the same guy who wrote The Martian, Andy Weir. And it's a very much like I don't really want to call it high concept sci-fi, but it's more of like on the hard science side of science fiction. And I read that and I was like, man, I enjoy reading this. I missed reading like novels, and not just doing audiobooks or reading comics or whatever. So it's nice to get a balance in there.
Yeah, that's cool. I can't remember what the last novel is that I read, so it's good that you're doing that.
Yeah, it's I used to read so much, and I part of it is I would buy books, and I would just end up with so many physical books. It just got annoying. And you're already collecting comic books, right? So it's like, that's a lot of paper.
Trees.
Yeah. So I figure like now that I read on like a tablet, or if I read on my phone or whatever, it's fine. Yeah, Martian is so good, and I don't know, Son of Crom. For all I know, you've read all of Andy Weir's stuff, but Project Hail Mary is not as good as The Martian, but it's probably a more complete story. Like The Martian's a very like one track, like this guy's just trying to survive Mars. There's more going on in Project Hail Mary, and it's still only about a couple of characters, which is pretty cool.
That's cool.
So before we move on, was there any other things that you've been watching, reading, or anything like that you wanted to talk about?
No, I think we covered most of it.
Cool. So before we move on, I do want to mention real fast, we talk about some of the shows that are coming up tomorrow on the EXP, since we are streaming over on the EXP as well as Bigby and I's channel. Bigby and My's channel. Tomorrow at 7 Eastern, 6 Central, you can catch Minute to Skim It with our producer on this show, Jay, who's dutifully typing in all those fun things that you see coming into chat from us and being really helpful and like he always is. He's one of the guys involved in Minute to Skim It. You can go check out his show along with Jen and Kyle and go and get their takes on new comic books that are coming out for New Comic Book Day and get a quick review of them. Highly recommend checking that out. That is coming on tomorrow on the EXP, so make sure you go check that out. Comic Tropes wonders why we're not watching. Actually, I think Bigby, I think you can get that on your hotel TV if you type in a little code or the back of your credit card or something. I think that'll work. Yeah, I hope you check it out. Hope you like it, Son of Crom. I've heard some kind of hit or miss things about some of Andy Weir's other writing. This one's pretty solid though. Isn't that a job for Trash Movie Bonanza? Which, if you're not familiar, that's a show that Chris does over on his Comic Trips After Dark channel, where they him and Jim Mahfood review terrible movies like Madam Web. Have you guys done Craven yet? Have you done that one? Because that'd be fun. So our main topic for the night, we're going to get right into it. And again, this was suggested by Bigby, and I think it's a fantastic topic. We're just going to be talking for a little while about comics that were based on toy lines or, kind of sprung up from toy lines. And I think that it's kind of fun too, because I had this list in my head. At one point, we weren't sure if Bigby was going to be able to join us tonight because of the travel. And so I kind of was like, in my head, I'm like, okay, I'll talk about this. I'll talk about that. And I didn't really need to write out notes for that. And then he sent over a list and I'm looking at it. It's like, holy crap. He sent over a list of not only every property that I was thinking of, but also like 10 others that hadn't even crossed my mind or maybe 5 or 6 others that hadn't even crossed my mind.
And there's some that I left. I was like, there were some other ones I was like, I left them off, but I might even throw those into.
Yeah, there's some really great ones on there, and by great ones, I also mean some that are probably not going to go down in the annals of history as being some of the best comic books or toys, for that matter, of all time. But there's certainly some really fantastic ones, and what are we talking about with this? We're talking about things, and these are the obvious ones, right? We're talking about things like G.I. Joe, things like Transformers, which had, not only very successful Marvel comic runs back in the 80s, but also additional runs in from different publishers throughout the years. Things like Mask is another one that was on my list. He-Man, Masters of the Universe, Silverhawks was on my list. My Little Pony. There's some great ones on here. That you have, and also some really obscure-ish ones to me that I'm not even familiar with. Like there's one on here there's 2 on here that I haven't heard of. So I'm very curious. So,
probably start with the most popular ones and work our way down and just make a little comment.
Okay, I was curious if you wanted to do that or kind of go the other way, because I almost think. Okay, let me just ask you this first: what is Mad Balls?
You're not familiar with Mad Balls?
I don't know Mad Balls, man.
Mad Balls are actually, I think they have a current comic out. Actually,
really,
yeah. They were these deformed baseballs, and sometimes they were toys that were gross out toys from the 90s.
Oh, I just Googled it. You know what? I'm so sorry. Of course, I recognize this once I see a picture of it. Okay.
Yeah. So. They were, kids liked gross things, and so they made these, they'd be stitched together, ooze and pus,
Yeah.
Gross things. And if you ever watch Froggy Flips on YouTube, he's a toy collector.
Yeah.
His big infatuation is Mad Balls and Garbage Pail Kids. So.
Oh, interesting. So I've watched that channel a bunch of times, and I definitely remember the Garbage Pail Kids. And maybe it's just because I didn't know what it was. I've not heard the Mad Ball, or it didn't register. I didn't know that's what those were called.
He's more recently become a toy collecting channel. He used to be like a garage sale flipping channel, and now he's become more of a toy channel.
Okay. Yeah, he seems like a cool dude.
He's a nice guy.
Yeah.
He's even into comics a little bit.
A little bit. Whenever that's what I kind of watch for, is like whenever he comes across the comic books, right? Like, and seeing some of the Joe stuff's really cool too.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, he started collecting GI Joes. He started collecting the Straight Arm Series 1 stuff.
Oh yeah, man. I think maybe my first Joe was a straight arm, but he got destroyed. It might have been like Grunt or something. He got destroyed so early on, I think, like, because I think the first year is Real American Hero, did it come out in 82?
82 or 83.
I think so, and that's the year I was born. So like, I think I got one when I was like 3 or something. So it didn't last very long. So I definitely was more into like 87 was like my big year for GI Joe.
Trope says 82.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what came to mind, because I know the comic came out around that time, slightly before.
We could go from the bottom up of my list if you wanted to, because it's kind of more obscure to the top of the list is the more popular stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the other one is Captain Action. I'm not familiar with. Again, if I Google it, I'm sure I'll immediately be like, oh, that's that
Captain
thing.
Action was kind of like a mega GI Joe character. He's a Silver Age comic book from DC. The artwork on the comics is amazing. Just beautiful artwork. Yeah, that's a Neil Adams cover. That one there, I think.
That's cool.
Yeah, he's like stand aside Superman. He's got his cat on a leash. So it's pretty cool. But
Right
yeah,
on.
so it was very short lived. I think it only went like maybe 7 or 8 issues, maybe even just 6 issues. But it's beautiful artwork on the series, and it's Silver Age DC.
Nice. Did he have do you have powers?
I don't know. I didn't. Okay. I'm not that familiar with the character, but there was him and his sidekick. I don't know what his sidekick is. Action Lad. I don't know.
If it's not Action Lad, it should be. Looks like we got I know Chris will appreciate this. We got a Pieta pose right there. Cover.
Yeah, the covers are just beautiful for the series. There's one with like a ghost woman on the cover. It's just amazing.
Very cool.
I have some real high grade copies of those. They're beautiful. I think that's the one, the pinkish one.
Oh yeah, with like a phantom.
And the phantom woman on the cover. Yeah.
Nice. All right. No, that's one that just escaped me, and I have very little outside of Marvel and kind of main DC. I have very little Silver and Golden Age kind of knowledge, and Platinum and all that kind of stuff too, of course. I'm learning, but it's not because I wasn't around for it. I didn't collect it, and
these are like the 12-inch GI Joes, like back in the day, Kung Fu Grip kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, but that was a UK character though. That was
okay.
So.
Kind of like Action Force or something.
Kind of like that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's probably the Action Force idea and came from the name from that, probably, because
right. That's what I was thinking of when I saw it.
So
cool. So we don't necessarily have to go all the obscure ones if you want to talk about one of the more popular ones too. But in fact, I'll talk about a popular one.
You pick. I'll let you pick them out. We'll just talk about them.
Well, I'll talk about a popular one that maybe they won't identify with a ton of people in our audience. I don't know. Maybe it does. Maybe we got a lot of bronies watching. But I've talked about My Little Pony a few times. My daughter loves My Little Pony, and it's really fun because I've interviewed Trish Forstner before, and it's really fun like showing her like Trish's art in different comic books that she has, like different covers, and like they do like galleries and stuff in the back of some of them with pinups and stuff like that. So we're reading like the IDW stuff, and obviously it's funny for my wife, who was watching the My Little Pony cartoon when she was a kid, and now she's reading My Little Pony comic books to her daughter years later.
Right.
So yeah, it's just kind of that's a really fun one. I will say the humor, like the writing in the My Little Pony comic, because it's based on like the Friendship is Magic series, the current stuff. And I know they've had a lot of other iterations too, of course. But I will say it's on point. Like it's actually pretty funny for what the target audience is, for the humor of the show. Like a lot of times humor comics don't land, they don't have the same
Right.
kind of timing and everything that you do like in a TV show or whatever. And unless they're in like that bite-sized comic strip form, which I think is a little bit easier to kind of, get that punchline in there. That comic book is hilarious. Like they do a great job with that. So
That's awesome. Yeah, Crom just mentioned. I forgot Barbie was one I didn't put on the list.
oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So yeah, I forgot about that one.
Yeah.
So,
That's a really
she had her Silver Age stuff, and then she had her more modern stuff with Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
So
God, and who did the cover of the first Marvel Barbie? It was somebody famous too, wasn't it? Oh, I want to say it's like actually like a legendary.
and that's like a homage to that first appearance of Dolphin, where she's swimming underwater.
Oh, that's a cool one. Yeah. Man, somebody in the chat's gonna beat me to it, but no, that's a great bring up, Crom.
Yeah, that is a good one.
Gosh, it's somebody who you look at the cover and you don't really expect it.
Wouldn't be like a Adam Hughes or something like that, right?
It's somebody like Art Adams or somebody, like it's somebody.
Okay.
But I don't know that that's who it is. But John Romita Sr. That's who it is.
I was gonna say, I was about to say John Romita. I was like, nah, man, well, maybe.
Maybe you never know, right? Here I'll kind of show everybody what I'm talking about in case you don't recognize that cover from memory. Just not what I don't necessarily automatically associate that with him.
Right.
But that's pretty cool, I think.
It's a history.
Yeah,
sure.
Absolutely.
I had a couple on the list that I don't know if a lot of people know that they were toys before they were comics, which was DC Superpowers and Marvel Superheroes Secret Wars. I don't know if people knew that, but
so Marvel, didn't they do it like in conjunction? Like, wasn't it like they planned both to?
Yeah, they wanted to release a toy line, but they also wanted to have something that made sense with the toy line. Why all these people were together?
Yeah.
So they did this Secret Wars series to support the toy line, and then DC Superpowers, same thing. That they went all in with Jack Kirby and everything, though. So
yeah,
that's pretty.
Yeah, and obviously both are iconic in their own ways. I think maybe just because I'm a Marvel fan, Secret Wars really identifies with me, or I identify with it. And I because I had those toys and stuff. I had some of the DC ones too when I was a kid, but more of the Marvels. And man, I mean, talk about so the toys. First of all, they're so good. And again, I'm just speaking of the Marvel side because that's what I know better. The toys are so good. They actually just did an homage kind of run on those. They did like a line of Marvel Legends figures that were based on each of those figures with like packaging and everything that was kind of similar, which is kind of cool. And then, but I mean, talk about the comic being so good. I mean, think about all the things that came out of Secret Wars. All the fans of that era, I think all can remember that book if you were a Marvel reader at all.
Oh yeah, definitely a good move by Marvel for sure.
Yeah,
that's interesting. Comic tropes there. The comic was to promote the toys, and the toy company said the most popular words for boys were secrets and wars.
Yes, that does ring a bell now that he says that. I remember kind of seeing that trivia somewhere. That is interesting. Comic Ozzy, that's a great bring up. Hot Wheels for sure.
Good one. Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
I forgot, guys. I actually picked up a weird box of comics that had a Hot Wheels comic in it. Totally forgot about that until then. Superpowers from DC were great action figures. Yeah, they were really fun. They had a lot of, if I remember correctly, and maybe misremembering this a little bit. I think they had a lot of action features too, which was kind of cool.
Yeah, and they were pretty good sculpts. They were real reminiscent of that era of DC art, like of the the George Perez and all that kind of stuff. DC art.
Oh my gosh, I got to go back to a couple comments that I missed here. I'm so sorry.
We're getting a brony fight in here, aren't we?
Yeah. So going back to My Little Pony for a second, Chris said lots of fart jokes. I've literally never seen My Little Pony, so I don't know what kind of jokes it would make. It's actually a lot of like personality based jokes. Like you have characters like Awesome Sauce is talking about Pinkie Pie here, and she'll do like she's supposed to be like really cutesy and fun, and yet her sense of humor is very like, oh, you heard a little animal? Well, I'm going to turn into like a hardcore raging, there's a lot of like absurd kind of humor when it comes to that kind of stuff. There's also fun jokes. Like there's these ogres in one issue that want to collect the ponies, and like on the shelf behind them, you'll see like there's Optimus Prime, and there's like, some different toys, like, fitting for what we're talking about tonight.
There you
go. All of a sudden characters are whipping out, giant inflatable versions of the other character to use as decoys, and like, where were you keeping that? Like stuff like that. Like it's, I mean, for the age it's directed at and everything, it's pretty funny. Pinkie Pie is great. I agree with that. Son of Crom mentioned Raggedy Ann was the first doll that had a comic. He thinks that would, I mean, if that's true, that would track for sure.
I think
don't know if she counts.
one of the first was it what's the doll that has, or the marionette that has the freckles?
The Raggedy Ann?
No, it was like
I couldn't.
Howdy Doody. Howdy Doody was one of the first.
Well, but he brings up that if she counts, it was in like the early 1900s. Wasn't Howdy Doody a few decades after that?
Yeah, Howdy Doody's the golden age. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, Raggedy Ann would be. Yeah.
Yeah. As not a comic historian, it's hard for me to say definitively, but that's a really good guess, I would say, or possibly more than that. Awesome Sauce says he's a brony and damn proud of it. Pinkie Pie is the best. Yeah, Pinkie Pie is really great. I also am a big fan of Fluttershy. Fluttershy is pretty cool too. Pinkie Pie is the funniest for sure. Applejack pisses me off. She's a stingy pony. But my favorite part was he saying that why do all the ponies have stripper names, which is pretty funny too. Let's see here. Sell it to me, Ban. I want an Alex Toth Hot Wheels comic so badly. Yeah, I can definitely go back and look. I think I'm trying to remember who it was, but definitely got one of the older ones. I can try to make it happen. Are you coming down, Chris? That'd be cool.
There you go.
Yeah. I think Amanda Connor, technically, I think she got her start. I'm trying to remember if her first work was a Vampirella cover or if it was a Solo Avengers Hawkeye story. I'm pretty sure that was her first published art, but maybe I'm wrong. I know Barbie was in there too, but I'm pretty sure that she did that. Vampirella Harris #1 was one of her first pieces of art, I'm pretty sure, and then Solo Avengers 6 featuring Hawkeye, I believe, is her first published work. Maybe I'm mistaken.
That's cool.
Yeah, but yeah, Secret Wars and DC Superpowers, both fantastic ones. The Wolverine claws were pretty terrible. Yep. They were pretty bad.
All right, Bronze, grab another title off the list. What's another title off the list?
Okay, well, we hope you see you there, Chris.
Yeah.
I think another good one. So let's go for, we talked about a couple popular ones. Let's go for an obscure one. I'm not saying it's obscure, but a more obscure. How about well, I guess actually, you know what, they get less and less obscure. So forget that I even said obscure. How about let's do Team America.
Team America. Yeah, do you remember the toy for that?
In my head, I'm actually going to Google it right now because in my head I'm picturing it, and I'm pretty sure I remember it, but I want to make sure that wasn't actually some other competing line.
Do you remember the Evil Knievel toy?
Yes.
It was that. It was the Dark Racer, but you wind it up and then the motorcycle takes off and goes flying over everything.
And when you do that, am I correct in that it says Matt Damon? Is that what it says when you? Okay. No, I definitely.
Police.
These are what I was picturing in my head. The problem I have with this is I never read the comic. I definitely remember seeing like ads and stuff in the back of comics. Is kind of what I remember it from.
Somebody was just reading. At John's Comics with Kids. They're going through all the X-Men and adjacent titles, and they were doing New Mutants, and Team America was in the New Mutants.
Oh, that's right. I actually do. I remember that.
Yeah, because they're all mutants, I guess. Apparently, when they all use their powers, they can summon the Dark Rider.
Yeah, and it was in like some crossover or something. It was kind of weird. Was it Inferno? I can't remember what it was. But yeah. Did you read the comic?
The New Mutants? Yeah, definitely read the New Mutants issues. But, no, I did not read too much.
Oh, I think we might have a frozen Bigby.
Oh, there
we go.
Oh, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay, I think they all first appeared in Captain America. So, but
that would make sense.
Tropes was saying he did an episode about them on his show.
So, nice! I'm gonna have to go watch that. They are all mutants. Man, that's so great. So, and then I guess the other question I have, and this is the dumb, obvious question because I made the Matt Damon joke. Was the Team America World Police movie in any way based on that franchise, or was it just like? Because I mean, they're using the name.
I think they just used the name. I don't think it was the same. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they use their own design.
They don't summon him. They transform someone, and they don't. Somebody was asking, does that person have to be willing to be transformed into the Dark Rider?
They don't call it Dark Rider for nothing. No, that's another good pull. One that I'm curious about because it's a comic book that I've seen the comics 1,000 times, and I love some of the covers, but I don't have any familiarity with it. I think I even had like some little like rubber pencil topper for this franchise at one point, but I was like, I don't know what this is. Tell me, anybody in chat, Bigby, tell me anything you can about Shogun Warriors, because like I said, I'm familiar with it, but I don't have any intimate knowledge of it.
They're giant kaiju fighting robots.
Yeah.
Yep.
Was it good though?
Action. I mean, they had a fairly long-running Marvel title. They fought Godzilla.
Right.
And there's the character. I think Red Ronin is a character from that Marvel invented for that series. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess it's if you like giant kaiju fighting robots.
And who doesn't? Because I know that there's a Godzilla issue that they're in. I don't know if he ever appeared in their series, but I imagine that they probably went every which way, but they could with that. Because I mean, I think that the covers are gorgeous, and I remember just kind of like liking them, and they're kind of some of the covers from that age that are just there's so many franchises that Marvel would just kind of come out with a book for, and you're like, whoa, okay.
Trumps is correcting me. I misspoke. Red Ronin was only in Godzilla, not part of Shogun Warriors.
Okay. So. All right. Good to know. Hey, have a good night, Crom. Thanks for stopping in. And we always appreciate those replay watches too. So thank you very much for that. Hope you have a good night.
So Shogun Warriors didn't cross over with Godzilla at all. Okay. I thought that I was misinformed. I thought that they had crossed over the two, because there was a Shogun Warriors Godzilla toy.
there was definitely a comic where I remember the cover because it's a Godzilla issue from the Marvel run that Shogun Warriors are on the cover. I never read the book, obviously, but
Yeah, because there is a Shogun Warriors related Godzilla toy where his fist launches off, and just like the robots does, which was like didn't make any sense, but you know.
you know, just Godzilla things. Man, I hope I'm not like imagining that. I'm pretty sure I'm right about that. Although I would think it'd be a little bit easier to find if that was the case. I can picture it in my head.
He had the little flame tongue thing that would come out of his mouth, and he had a launching fist. Yeah. Tropes is saying that he had a toy at the same time, but it wasn't actually a Shogun Warriors toy.
Oh, okay. So. Oh, here it is. Why are you such a weird image to load? There we go. I'll share what I'm looking at here.
And there was a toy for Team America. Yeah, it was the Dark Rider. It was just he was a Evel Knievel type bike, but he was all black. Oh, he says no. He was a Shogun Warriors toy, I think, just not in the comic. Okay,
but this is also
there's Godzilla fighting the Shogun Warriors. Okay, there we go.
Oh, it's Cavalcade Comics, though. That's interesting.
What issue number is that? Probably the same issue as a Marvel issue, you'd think.
But, yeah, interesting. Oh, it's a fake cover. I was going to say, I've seen this picture before. But, yeah, if it's a fake cover, maybe it just gets circulated around. Thank you very much for the corrections in real time. And that is why we have one of the best in the biz, Comic Tropes, in our chat.
It's correcting our incorrect assumptions and false memories.
Oh, wow. Memory unlocked. ElfQuest did have a toy line. I can picture those little guys now. There's so many things like that because I was born in 1982. So a lot of these things I was pretty young. But I remember seeing now like the little toys. Interesting. That's a good pull. Yeah, Shogun Warriors. Maybe I need to go back and read some. I'm sure some of it's on Marvel Unlimited. That'd be an easy thing to read.
That'd be.
Yeah. Okay. This one is interesting to me because I had the comics as a kid, but I don't know if I actually remember the story at all. No, I don't remember the story at all, but Mask had, and I know they've come out with a couple different comic lines since then too. I loved the Mask toys as somebody, because it was kind of like G.I. Joe and Transformers combined. Like
yeah.
They didn't really transform, but they did into like different versions of the vehicles, right? Like,
there was a motorcycle that turned into a helicopter.
Exactly. The helicopter turns into a plane.
The smokestacks were cannons.
Yeah. And I remember like pretty much every vehicle had an ejector seat. And I remember Mask, as a franchise pretty well. What I don't remember is I remember the artwork in the comic book, and I can kind of picture it in my head, like so many of these things, but I don't remember if it was very good. But I know, and by the way, Mask is actually kind of coming back. To be clear, we're talking about Mask, the vehicle toy line action figures, not Mask, the Jim Carrey, movie that's based on the comic, which is a different episode. But yeah, the comic books, I don't remember if they were any good or not. It is funny when you search Mask, most of what comes up is the Jim Carrey style property, which I shouldn't call that, but that's just what I think of. But yeah, I don't know. Did you ever read the Mask comic?
I watched the cartoons. I didn't read the comic. But
yeah,
I know Karen's pages. She got some original art for it, and she was so stoked.
Whoa, some pages?
Yeah,
That's cool.
she did. It was she has a pretty cool intro to that.
Wait a minute. Star Wars toys. Actually, I've got a small Star Wars toy related tie-in in one of the news pieces we're going to talk about later. So there's a little teaser for you there, Ozzy.
There you go.
Yeah, that's a cursed toy. Mask toys from the Cher movie. That's a movie I've never seen, but I definitely remember the character from 1,000 pictures or the back of the box or whatever. Marvel tried so hard to make toy comics after G.I. Joe, Transformers, ROM, Micronauts, Dino Riders, Sky Raiders, Madballs, Visionaries. There's a lot. There's a lot.
Tars.
And that's what I'm talking about with the that's another good one. That's what I'm talking about with it wouldn't surprise me to see Godzilla in a Shogun comic, because that's the era where you just would pick up a comic book and you're like, wow, they're doing this now.
Right. It would make all the sense in the world. It'd be a great crossover. So
yeah. And kind of going back to Mask for a second, part of it coming back, like, it would be sweet if you had like a G.I. Joe Mask crossover. Somebody pointed out they keep trying to cross over G.I. Joe and Transformers, and Mask would be a better crossover with Transformers than G.I. Joe in some ways. Kind of agree with that. That can make some sense. But Hasbro and all. Here's a couple that are kind of related in my mind. You have Smurfs and Care Bears on here.
Mm-hmm.
I remember Care Bears. Obviously, I remember both these franchises, but the comics, I'm having a hard time picturing the Smurfs comics. I remember the Care Bears comic. There was like a Marvel anniversary issue Care Bears comic. That's pretty much the only thing I can picture.
That was a Starline book, and then Smurfs was before that. They had their own series, but do you remember the little tiny rubber figures for Smurfs?
Oh yeah. Every time I would go to the dentist, I could pick one of those. I mean, they had like a bunch of things in a little bin you'd get after the dentist appointment. But I'd always pick out the little Smurfs because I was like, hell yeah, Smurfs are awesome.
Right.
Smurfing great.
I think the original, I'm not sure when the original Smurfs comic came out, but it's early 80s, I believe.
Okay.
So, but yeah, it's a Marvel book. And Biker Mice from Mars. There you go. That's another one.
I just saw some Biker Mice from Mars figures at a Walmart not that long ago.
Snorks for the win. There we go.
Oh man, people are pulling out some great ones. It's really interesting to see what people go to. Oh yeah, Strawberry Shortcake did too. Yeah,
she had her own Star book too.
Yeah. I guess the Star line really kind of had a lot of stuff. Now that I think about it, Smurfs was a comic first though, from Belgium. Aren't we talking comics based on toys? Oh.
Smurfs was in a magazine from Belgium. Actually, I have a short on my channel.
Oh, okay, nice. Is it translated to, like, can you read it in English?
I think it's just in what is the language of Belgium?
French. I think they're one of those, or is it Dutch? I think it's Dutch, maybe.
Dutch. Okay.
They're one of those countries where I feel like they speak a few languages.
One of my friends, Ricky from All Sorts of Words, he got a nice copy of that. Actually, a slabbed copy. It is it's called. The story's called the Magic Flute, I believe, is what it's called. But it's first appearance of the Smurfs, and it's like a Golden Age book.
Wow.
I believe it's pretty old. It's pretty old.
That's kind of cool. I didn't know that. I'm learning a lot tonight. That's really neat.
Spiro number 1071. There you go.
Wow. Some love for the Strawberry Shortcake comic from Awesome Sauce.
Blue. It's even a blue cover on the Spiro. I remember that. It's got like a light blue cover.
1958. Wow. Spiro 1071. That's cool. Yeah, so many of these that you put on here, and I'm like, wow, I didn't even think about that or this or whatever. So good pulls. I'll pull up the My Comic Shop listing for Spiro 1071 here, so people can kind of see what we're talking about.
Yeah, he's been collecting. I don't know if you guys were familiar with all sorts of words, but he's been collecting a lot of like weird, obscure first appearances. He's been doing all the Addams Family characters in the New Yorker, which is nobody had a comprehensive list, so he's kind of come up with the comprehensive list of the first appearances of all the Addams Family characters, which is kind of interesting.
Oh wow!
Because they were just in a strip, like single panel strip.
Yeah,
in the New Yorker.
I've heard there's some people that consider those like first appearances, like if you can, because there's all the Superman strip comics too, where you have to like kind of collect those if you're trying to collect everything for Superman. So I don't know. That's kind of an interesting kind of debate.
Right.
See, the flute thing could have very well been true, Comic Tropes. Like, it wouldn't have surprised me at all. Because he said before that the Smurfs are created when a medieval knight gets a flute stuck in his butt. And frankly, that sounds like the kind of thing that could be true.
This one time at night camp.
this one time at Smurf camp.
Right.
Yeah, he's very deadpan convincing. Like, 'cause it would be like, here's this interesting fact. Here's this interesting fact. Here's this interesting fact. You guys believe that?
I love that we have him for disinformation as well as correcting our disinformation.
Yeah, right. And then it'll be like, my correction, I was just making that up. Smurfs, the musical fruit. The more Gargamel eats, the more he toots.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean that's the way it is in the cartoon. So I don't know.
That's
what I remember.
Do you ever read Twisted Toy Fair Theater?
No.
Oh, it's hilarious. It's like Robot Chicken before Robot Chicken, but they had a meeting of all the bad guys, and they're talking with Gargamel about why he's so obsessed with Smurfs. And he says this one time I ate one, and I think it's Megatron's like, you mated one. He's like, no, I ate one. And he's like, and then what happened? And it just shows like this acid trip of everything. And that's why he's obsessed with Smurfs. He wants to eat them because it's like a drug trip.
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, Jay, I think that's correct, that like she's created to be a spy. But I'm kind of going off the cartoon lore. I don't know how accurate it is to the true Smurf canon. Which we take very seriously here on West Coast Comics.
Disharmony among the Smurfs.
Of course. Because women, right?
That's only what we all could do.
Totally joking. But seriously. Speaking of serious, before we move on to keep talking about something, there's some really key ones coming up here that I can't wait to hear about. But I do want to talk about another show that's taking place on the EXP tomorrow night. We're talking about the EXP. Folks, you can go subscribe there right now. The link is in the description. While you're down there, there's a link for Bigby's channel and my channel as well. If you want to come hang out over on any of those channels, you should probably go sub them all up, just saying. But you can watch Welcome to Wonderland at 8 Eastern, 7 Central tomorrow on the EXP. It's a comic claim sale that does focus primarily on stuff that's coming out for New Comic Book Day. This is great for a lot of people like me who don't really technically have like a close local LCS. So you can go pick up a comic book. If maybe there's something that you forgot to order or you had a hard time getting, maybe you can go on there and grab it. And they also do like a panning, kind of pan across all their wall books that they have, the stuff that just came in, that kind of stuff. So you can pick up some vintage books as well. But that's really handy for people that don't have a local comic shop. So that's a great show to go check out over on the EXP. She was their Comic Tropes spreading disinformation. I love it. You thought Gargamel was a witch/woman when you were a little kid. Well,
That's
I don't
okay.
know. Yeah, you weren't
I'll
dumb.
do that to you.
Yeah. I love actual Dracula's comment. And then Marvel put out I'm thinking you mean the Smurfs comics, and Paper Cuts is the trade paper back.
Okay.
Okay. 25. Yeah, good. Thank you very much. That's a good point, Jay. It's such a good point. You can help me out next time and put it in my notes for the time reminder, because then I'll remember to say it, because otherwise I don't, because I'm basically Ron Burgundy up here. I'm Ron Burgundy. Yeah, 25% off for EXP watchers. So let them know, you're watching the EXP. Obviously, they'll probably know that already when they're watching the stream or when they're reading from the chat. But yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. I was just giving you a hard time. I mean, technically, it's stuff I should probably remember. Yeah, Battlestar Galactica. Definitely one I was going to talk about. Good point on the Buck Rogers. Excuse me. Oh, we both missed Voltron.
Oh, Voltron. There you go. There you go. Although,
how many issues of that were there? There was like what, 3?
3. Yeah.
Of
the,
I mean, I think there's probably been newer comics, I would imagine, from, I don't know, like IDW or Dark Horse or something for that Netflix series that came out. But I know the classic series, I think there was only 3.
Yep. 3.
Okay. But yeah, Battlestar Galactica, that's a very good pull. I love the cover of issue number 1 too. I had to hunt a copy of that down.
That was a TV show that became a comic. But...
Good point. Technically correct, which is the best kind of correct.
I had to filter, because when I was doing toys, it was like, oh, this thing. Well, that's a video game. That's not a toy. So I started thinking of video games too. I was like, oh, wait. Oh, that's a video game.
So I'm trying to get through a lot of the ones that I'm not.
Thundercats. That's the one.
That's on our list. I'm trying to get through some of the ones that I'm not as familiar with, and one of the ones that's on that list for me is Sectars, which again, I've seen it, but I'm not deeply familiar with it.
Not a super successful toy line.
Yeah.
Little bug guys. I mean, they just somebody just redid this. The series that they breathed new life into it.
Yeah, I thought it was Dynamite for a second, but maybe it's Oni. I know somebody definitely was coming out with new Sectars, because I've seen a post or two about it on the Facebooks when I'm scrolling for comic book stuff. But again, not being a franchise I was that familiar with, it was kind of hard for me to.
Yeah, I had a friend of mine was telling me one of his favorite toys was, I guess there was like a spider that you put it was a glove that made the legs move. That was part of it, It's a giant spider thing.
Hey, by the way, Lyle, I saw you pop into the chat earlier and forgot to say hi because I was in the middle of saying something, which is a thing that happens to me with ADHD and all that fun stuff. But Lyle, you shared this on Comic Collectibles earlier, so I'm sure you're cool with me kind of just mentioning this. Everybody sent out some positive wishes for Lyle, who's having a surgery. I believe it was tomorrow, I think he said. So best wishes on that, and hope everything goes smooth with that. Definitely want to make sure everything goes okay.
Yeah.
TMNT is from another. That's another kind of in the mix kind of one for sure.
Yeah. Well, we were trying to go with toys that were originally a toy that became a comic.
Yeah.
And then it's a comic that became a toy that mutated into a kid's thing.
Yeah, it's kind of a little incestual there in some ways. Hey, right. Christina, what's up?
Hey.
Well, best wishes on that tomorrow, Lyle. Definitely hope everything works out okay for you.
Sure.
Oni Press. Okay, so it was Oni. Okay, thank you very much, Jay, for doing the legwork there. See, we got fact checkers left and right. We need them. So Sectars, yeah, I guess not a ton of huge love for that one. It seems like, although some people, of course, liked it. Let's go. Let's see. Here's the other one. This is kind of my big. I feel like everybody in the world's read this comic except for me. and I've definitely poked my head in a couple issues, but I didn't really know what was going on, and that's Rom Space Knight.
Okay.
So, educate me on whether or not Rom was a comic that's worth reading, because there's a lot of people that really liked it, from what I understand.
I mean, it was a long-running Marvel series, crossed over with a ton of titles.
Yeah.
You've got like the bad guys from Rom are actually still kind of bad guys in the Marvel universe. The dire wraiths are these, demonic things that want to invade our dimension. They were in X-Men a few times. X-Men were in Rom a few times.
Well, and they even recently-ish, Young Cable had kind of a tie-in with some characters from Rom too, because he got there was a whole swords thing in Krakoan X-Men stuff, and his sword was from their planet, which starts with a G, I want to say, but I can't pull it off the top of my head. Ron Space Knight. That'd be pretty funny. He's just Ron the Space Knight.
Just Ron Burgundy.
Captain Ron.
No, I mean, it was a reflection of the times, for the toys and stuff. And they another one of those things that just got re-released as a new title. So from another company, right?
I believe so. Although I do know the other big news about that we covered, or maybe it was just me that covered it a long time. I can't remember. It was a long time ago. I remember hearing that Rom was finally getting an omnibus release because it hadn't been in print in a while. And I know a lot of people were excited about that. So that's kind of where that comes from. I don't know if it was just like completionists or people that had a huge love for Rom. I know Rom just got a Marvel Legends figure, which people seem pretty excited about, but it's hard to tell if it's just that really vocal minority. Either way, if you're a Rom fan, I'm super happy for you that you're getting some new things coming out.
Rom and Micronauts, right? Didn't Micronauts just got the same thing, the omnibus?
Yeah, which is also on our list, and people have kind of mentioned it in chat. There we go. Yeah, Micronauts.
I think it's interesting too that a lot of the characters that are invented by Marvel for these series weren't actually toys, so Marvel still owns the rights to a lot of the characters. Like for Micronauts, they own Bug, they own I can't remember the lady, the female character. They own also I believe the big bad guy from Micronauts.
I'm not going to pull that name. Yeah,
I can't believe it. I totally had his name and I totally forgot it. But they own the rights to a lot of the characters that are ancillary in those titles. So it's kind of interesting. So like when those rights revert back to the rights holders, Marvel still owns the rights to the characters that they created.
Jay is, I think Rom, I can't remember if it's 33. That actually might be like the second appearance of Rogue. I can't remember if that's actually that issue. It's like it's in that range of numbers, which is one of the reasons I know one of the reasons I've cracked open a Rom, because I was trying to track down some of the early Rogue appearances, and I bought there's an X-Men issue and a Rom issue that came out like in the same day.
Yeah,
she's in both of them.
Yeah. Baron Karza, I think, is the name of the guy from
Hal, by the way, Hal, thanks for coming to the show. Says, too bad that the legal issues will prevent a Rom movie from ever being made unless Marvel and Hasbro somehow made a highly unlikely deal. It's interesting. It's one of a number of franchises on here: Micronauts, Rom, Sectars, that I'm familiar with them, but only from like, I didn't have the toys. I didn't read the comics, but I definitely recognize them, seen them on shelves.
I never read a ton of Rom either, but I always felt like it kind of had like a Silver Surfer kind of vibe, where he was kind of trapped in the armor. At the end of this series, he was finally.
And I believe we have a frozen. Maybe we'll come back in a second. There we go. You're frozen for a second. He was trapped in the armor.
The whole thing. I said, yeah. So I always felt like Rom had kind of a Silver Surfer-esque vibe to it. Like he was kind of almost trapped in that armor. And at the end of the series, I know they had him freed from the armor. So, but I don't know. I did not read a ton of it, so I cannot tell you
right
definitely that I know everything about it. But I knew there was a whole other core of Space Knights that they made based off of just that one toy that Marvel made of their own. That, as far as I know, there was only one toy ever made for the toy line.
Gosh, as soon as
Was
you said
wrong.
that, it's like Galadorians or something like that. I think that's wrong, but it's close. That's like their species or whatever. Something like that.
That sounds about right.
I know it's not exactly right, but I feel like that's most of it. So we got to talk about. We've been talking about this for a while. We have to talk about some of the big players on the block, right? We've talked about some of the littler ones. So in no particular order, I mean, G.I. Joe, Transformers, Masters of the Universe, Thundercats, especially for comic books, and you know, kind of, we're talking a little bit about kind of generically, like somehow some of these things are cool, or things we saw when we were kids, or all that kind of stuff. But those comic books to me are the ones where you start to kind of, at least in my mind, from the ones that I was exposed to, starting to kind of start to elevate into the comic was like its own thing that had a huge following, or a big following at least. Probably the minor two of those big four, I guess, is probably like Thundercats, which, I mean, you know, the newer comic was pretty successful, but I'm thinking about the classic comics. And then the Masters of the Universe was kind of a big deal, but I feel like I don't remember how many issues it ran, but I don't remember it running for a ton of issues either.
It didn't run. Yeah, it was miniseries on both. I think on both of them. It was DC and then Marvel.
Yeah, which is kind of interesting too.
Yeah, but yeah, the big superstars of that are definitely G.I. Joe and Transformers.
100%.
And have developed their own lore, and, like we said, characters that were invented just for those series and stuff. So yeah.
Well, and I mean, you know, one of the things that I was doing the anniversary celebration, Dynamite came out with the Transformers card series, and so as part of that, I was able to have an opportunity to sit down with some of the creators and at least, you know, exchange some words with them. And unfortunately, because of a prior arrangement, Bob Budiansky wasn't able to come on, but, you know, famously, he created the character profiles and names for like 150 of the G1 Transformers, because essentially it was, you know, here's the design, but essentially it was kind of a blank slate for what we're going to call this character and what their kind of personality is going to be. And it's really interesting to hear him talk about that, because he talks about it it was like, to him, it was a job. It was very like matter of fact. Like, that's kind of how he talks about things, which is interesting. You know, it's not like he's sitting there like waxing about how much he loved this character, or how much he hated this character, or whatever. He had a few favorites or whatever, but it's fascinating to listen to. But I mean, some of those characters and the names and the personalities and how they affected people, like it was created in the way he tells it. In my mind, it's like he was created over like a week, and like he just was like, we're gonna call this one, you know, Brawn, and we're gonna call this one Cliff Jumper, and we're gonna, you know, like he just was kind of. I'm not trying to say he willy-nilly came up with these things. He kind of makes it seem like towards the end he was having a hard time kind of like coming up with new names and new profiles or whatever. But those were characters created essentially by the comic book writer who kind of created a lot of what ended up becoming G1 Transformers, as I understand it, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, I remember seeing where he got that assignment. I saw a little snippet where he was kind of like, "You're going to be doing this," and he was like, "Okay."
Yeah, and you know, part of me loves hearing from creators who it was just a job to them. Like, it's kind of a weird, like refreshing kind of thing. And it because maybe if I was 20, it would probably hit me a lot differently. But at my age, it's kind of like, wow, you know, all these characters that we've cared about for 40 years or whatever, and to them it was just like, you know, it's just this character I created, and that was the job I had to do, is I had to create that character. Well,
like being one of the people who had to do the work for the toy line stuff was considered kind of like the dregs of doing the comic stuff.
There's definitely some of that too, for sure. I know exactly what you're saying. but I know, like, for example, like talking to like somebody like Randy Emberlin, who was an inker for a long time on GI Joe, which we're going to talk about in a second. He loved it because the comic was selling really good. He knew, like, okay, well, it's not getting canceled anytime soon because it's selling really well.
Right.
A lot of people are having a hard time keeping up on the book because there's a lot of technical details, that kind of stuff. So it's like, as long as you can deliver it on time, you're probably going to be, kept on that book because that's what they're looking for. So there's kind of interesting perspectives both ways on that. But it is fascinating to me just to hear that when people talk about it. So I decided to mention
Yeah, no, it is. To hear the history of it is definitely interesting.
Yeah. The Transformers comic book, I will tell you though, going back and reading the Marvel comic is there's so much exposition in those early issues. It is rough.
Yeah.
And part of that is the comic telling of the storytelling of the time. Especially the Marvel books from that time tend to be very wordy, which is fine to a certain extent, but
Right.
I mean, I swear, especially the first issue is like 90% dialogue and like 10% art. It's fascinating. I still think it's a really good.
They had a hard time, I think, trying to make it an interesting dynamic between humans and robots.
Yeah.
And I think that's been the struggle with Transformers for a long time, is to try to find the right balance of just they didn't really, I don't think they really felt like they could have the robot characters relating to each other and make it interesting.
They make it interesting. You're frozen again. Just, yeah, there you go.
Okay, where did I cut out?
Making it interesting.
Okay, I felt like they had a hard time feeling like they could have the robot characters just relating to one another and not without having thrown in human characters as well. And so it was kind of an interesting problem they had to tackle.
Yeah. As far as this is a good question from Hal. The little comics are included with the toys. I think that there's a market for those among complete people that are trying to put together the complete toys. I think that's primarily where the value comes from those.
There's a lot of He-Man, like Masters of the Universe had little comics that came with the figures.
Yeah. I don't believe, because I think for most comic collectors, it usually comes down to first appearances. And I don't think there's really any that were, and maybe there was, and I'm just not aware of it. It's not something
There might be, that might be, definitely could be the possibility of first appearances for Masters of the Universe characters, because
there's a lot of them for sure. So it's definitely possible. But yeah, that's a good question. One we'll have to dive into. And Awesome Sauce comes in with here. We got our third fact checker. Probably more like our fifth or sixth fact checker. Rogue's second appearance was ROM 32, so one off from the 33 that Jay was talking about. Which, I mean, no, he didn't say he had the second appearance of Rogue. It's just you missed it by one. That would be a pretty good issue to have. But hey, maybe ROM 33 is a banging issue. I don't know. Yeah, so I think I was going to say part of it is I was talking about Bob Budiansky and his attitude and stuff, and we talked about that. The person I did interview that was available is Simon Furman, and he was the writer of the Transformers UK comic book, which it is interesting because I like the Marvel run. I remember reading it when I was a kid and really enjoying it, especially as you got later into the series. I feel like it kind of found its legs. And it stopped being like just a super fast introduction to characters every few issues because they were coming out with new toys, and that still happened, but that wasn't all it was. But the UK series, it felt like Simon had a little bit more love for world building and lore building, and he kind of created some stuff that was pretty neat in that series. So if you haven't read the Transformers UK stuff, I highly recommend it. I think that's a good comic. I think a lot of the stuff that you end up seeing later on in Transformers lore, it seems like he kind of had a hand in some of the DNA that created that. A lot of stuff around the movie, the cosmic kind of aspect of it, and not just the fight on Earth. but we got to talk about G.I. Joe. And we've talked about G.I. Joe a lot on this show. I know we're both big fans, and I know, like, people like Chris in the chat, like, huge fan, and like his comment here, as far as the quality of the comic itself, G.I. Joe is far and away the best of these. Hard to disagree with that.
Yeah.
I'm biased, probably is the best way to put it, but
Right.
man, Larry Hama sure knows how to write a comic. It's kind of funny. I actually, you could call this a shameless plug, I guess. But I'm kind of reorganizing my comics and trying to pull stuff for Frankenstein. And I'm bringing all my doubles of G.I. Joe books, doubles and triples in some cases. So I've got a ton of G.I. Joe books I'm bringing to Frankenstein. That's just like half of them. Sorry about the mic scrape there, but yeah, like some of the nice, key issues, like that's a newsstand, G.I. Joe 26, Origin of Snake Eyes. Yeah, some fun stuff. First Flint. Actually, I've got 2 copies of First Flint, so there's gonna be some fun stuff. But man, just every time I dig through G.I. Joe comics or read them from the original Real American Hero run from Marvel, and then of course a lot of the later stuff that happened that continued that series, it's just so good. It's just so good.
I think, like what we're saying, like with the people were saying, like they felt like they were being punished by being assigned to that stuff.
Yeah.
But how?
Oh, somebody's streaming. What's a hot new show? They're streaming Severance in the hotel, and it is causing Bigby's Wi-Fi to drop out. Everybody, that must be what's going on. Oh, there we go. I think he's back.
Yep. It was a middle saying stuff, of course. Where did I leave off?
I'll be honest, I got so into my vamping there that I forgot exactly the last thing you said.
I feel like that Hama was one of the people who took it, instead of being like a punishment, he took it as he could create his own thing and really get into world building and making his own thing, and not really having to have to worry about a lot of people looking over his shoulder, and really being able to make something special.
At least the way he tells it, which I have no reason to doubt. He absolutely seemed to have more power, more control over some of the narrative and that than at least you hear other creators talk about for licensed properties. I think a lot of that was in part of why Hasbro came to Marvel in the first place. And, they kind of said, hey, we need some story for these toys. And boy, did they get the right person for it.
Right.
Figure drawing. Yes, I do have a favorite sexy G.I. Joe cover, and it is off the top of my head.
Is it the one with Baroness strapped to the front of his tank?
So I absolutely love that cover. It's hard for me to call it sexy. I'm not super into like bondage per se, but I to a lot of people it would be, and like I'd be willing to put that in like the second spot. This is probably my favorite like sexy G.I. Joe cover. It's G.I. Joe 143, which I'm trying to remember who the cover artist is. Jesse Orozco and Tim Tui apparently are the artists on that one. But one of the late books in the run. I've actually got a couple copies of this, so one of them. That's why I looked at this earlier. So I was like, oh, that's one of them. Hey, she needs some help. She's trapped on Cobra's Dark Island.
There's a lot of comments coming on this.
Oh. I bet. Here, folks, I'm sorry. I know you probably can't see very well. Let me zoom in for you a little bit here. Oh, does it not? It's not reacting anymore. That's stupid. I was scrolling, but there you go. Real fast before I get to some of those comments, Awesome Sauce, do not worry about the typos with the text to speech. I totally understand. And medication. It's all good. It's all good. Just realize we're doing our best.
He did say a bunch of those He-Man comics were drawn by Bruce Timm, which is very interesting.
Oh, that is I mean, those would be cool. Just Bruce Timm art is amazing. So those would be cool just for Bruce Timm collectors. Doubles of 155. No, I don't have. As kind of famously have told the story a few times. I sold my copy of 155 for pennies at one point, not knowing that it was rare, desirable, and not caring because I was like, I'm just keeping my favorite issues from this. And now I'm trying to rebuild the run, and boy, I wish I still had it.
155 was one of the books that got me back into collecting.
Oh yeah, because you found a copy of it.
Yeah, I found a copy of that and the G.I. Joe special, the McFarlane.
Oh yeah,
homage pose. And that was
yeah.
the first two books I saw in the box where they said they were, what were they, 6 for $10 or whatever. I was like, wait, how much?
That's a good deal. That's a good deal. I agree with Richard's comment here. Yeah, this is actually really true, by the way. The only thing I would kind of hesitate on is the movies part. But boy, for toys, comics, and TV, they actually were firing on all cylinders. And it's still crazy to me that G.I. Joe fizzled out. Kind of like I think 93 is pretty much the last main year. There might have been some 94 stuff, I can't remember. But then it kind of morphed into like Street Fighter and some of those other sublines or whatever. But yeah, you're 100% right, man. Yep, being successful in all three. That's important.
Yeah.
Snake Eyes cover. I mean, that one that the Bigby's talking about that McFarlane did was pretty impressive. He's definitely got some Spidey-esque bulging going on that cover, if I remember correctly.
It's not actually McFarlane. It's a homage to McFarlane. So.
Oh, did he not do the actual cover of that issue?
No, it was right after McFarlane had left Marvel, and it was kind of a screw you to Todd, from what I've heard. So
interesting. Well, do you know who did the cover art for that?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. Chris will probably tell you right up pretty quick, but it wasn't McFarlane.
Interesting. Okay. I wonder if it was somebody like Andrew Wildman or somebody like that was kind of working on G.I. Joe at the time. By the way, this is another, I don't know why, but just there's something about this cover that I always liked. I wouldn't say it's necessarily the sexiest cover, although it's a pretty sexy Baroness cover. But
there. I like that pose.
There's just something cool about this. And speaking of Andrew Wildman, this is one of his covers. Yeah, there's just something kind of cool going on there. If I remember correctly, this is like the Castle Destro is like transforming or something like that while this is going on, but it's kind of like a oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the artist name. I want to say Geiger, which is totally incorrect. The illusions, oh boy, whatever, I forgot his name. Well.
Oh, you're talking about the staircases that go into each other?
Escher. That's boy. I got to get caught up with chat here. Okay, you got the title right. Nice. It would be cool if Quicksand was actually real. Yeah, Quicksand. It's like that joke I've heard 1,000 times. Figure drawing. When I was a kid, I thought quicksand would be a much bigger problem in day-to-day life than it actually is. I love that. Right. It's nuts that he never got to do a cartoon episode like other comic writers. That's a good point. Interesting. I didn't really think about that. Oh, G.I. Joe. Oh, wow. G.I. Joe Volume 6 by Art Adams. Yeah, I was just thinking about the original run. Wow. So G.I. Joe Volume 6.
The G.I. Joe special contains the art by issues by Todd McFarlane.
Mm-hmm.
The cover artist is Ghoster and Koblish.
Weird. I'm not familiar with their work or their names, at least.
Yeah.
Well, I'm super curious. So I'll throw this up here. I think this is the one that Figure Drawing is talking about. But that's a cool one. Yeah, if you want to get to after the Real American, there is some smoking Baroness covers. Mike Mayhew did an amazing one.
There was that one that was my homage on my squatty picture.
Oh, right. Adam Hughes did a really good one. There's an artist named Krillin Repin that did a really good one. There's some gorgeous Baroness Art Germ. There's some there's just some really good ones. Yeah. Sold the whole run for pennies. It's sad. Yes. 94 was last year. Okay. Battle Beast figures.
Those last issues of G.I. Joe are so hard to find because they're just so low print run.
Yeah, and it was getting hard too to find. I remember like trying to find the books. Like I did find them on newsstands, but like comic spinner racks at the grocery store, that kind of thing. But it was getting hard. Battle Beasts is a name that I feel like I'm going to feel like an idiot as soon as I look them up. But I'm thinking of like Transformers, Beast Wars, or whatever.
Yeah, you got the actual name of that guy, Scott Koblish. Okay, who did that McFarlane homage?
Okay, so they're like little mini dudes. Little mini figures. Okay. Yeah, I remember this. Like, there's like a wolf looking dude, like a lion looking dude, there's a white lion with blue armor. I remember. I don't remember and I certainly don't remember the comic. But yeah, good one, Brandon. Deep cut for me. Cool cover. MC. Oh, hey, there we go. Escher. Yep.
There you go.
Cold Slither, you'll be joining us soon. Yep. Yeah. Oh man, the Cold Slither action figures, that looks crazy good. He's good and working today. Oh, that's cool. I know these are things that you guys already talked about, but I'm just getting caught up with the chat. Right on. Oh yeah, Nakayama, Dampanosian, Sozumika did an amazing one recently. Actually, I got the foil for that. I mean, there's so many good ones. That it's almost like cheating. I've got this really amazing original Baroness art up here by this guy named Chris. He does this YouTube channel, Comic Tropes or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I know there's some other good original Baroness art out there too. From this guy named Bigby. All right, on Battle Beasts were Transformers in Japan that got their own brand. Oh, okay. So were they like or like headmasters or whatever? Interesting. Okay. Yeah, but the comic is just, I've talked a million times about, how cool I think it was that characters died in the comic book at a couple of points. Most famously the war in Trucial Abysmia. The silent issue is a masterpiece issue. The background with the Arashikage clan and Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes and kind of all the lineage there. The plot line we talked about with like the running thing with Zartan and his kind of treachery. Yeah. I mean, it gets a little silly at times for sure. Cobra Island Civil War is masterful.
Yeah.
And frankly, some of the other comics are pretty decent too. I'm not a huge fan of the Image run, for example. There's some decent stuff in there. The IDW run, there's some cool stuff. Like I think Don Moreno is a cool character. I think that's kind of interesting now, and I think at this point we basically have both running around. Let's see. There's just so much good stuff, and oh yes, John Royal did draw a good cover. Oh, and J. Scott Campbell did the Danger Girl stuff too with that, and I think he even did some standalone G.I. Joe covers as well. What am I describing, Awesome Sauce? The Comic Tropes piece or one of the covers I talked about? I don't remember which one you'd be referencing there.
It's probably the one where you were showing Baroness that you thought somebody was talking about.
Oh yeah, she's just kind of standing. If it's that one, it's the Arthur Adams. She's kind of standing.
It's kind of a sultry pose.
Yeah, sultry pose. She's got kind of a asymmetrical, like hips jutting out from a different direction than her torso, kind of thing. John Scott Royal Campbell. No, that's funny. It's a not okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's funny because there's John Royal, who definitely has a J. Scott Campbell style, and there's also Paul Green, who has a very J. Scott Campbell style. I don't know if he's ever done GI Joe though. I think he's done commissions or something like that. Oh, interesting. I did not know that IDW did a second printing for 155.
Oh, there you go.
That's different. But yeah, there's just so much, because the comics, like the cartoon is great. I think if you watched it when you're a kid and you still can kind of remember it, the comic still holds up in a lot of ways. I think regardless of if you're reading it for the first time, or if there's definitely going to be some references that don't hold because they were geopolitical at the time or whatever. But that's true of comics in pretty much every era.
Right.
I will say, as a kid, I absolutely loved reading Larry Hama's military jargon explanations and breakdowns. As an adult, I find it really hard to read. I'm somebody who's kind of into a lot of that stuff. And when you know what that stuff is already, his explanations seem at this point kind of, I think he could do a better job by explaining what it is through context rather than through exposition. But that's a minor nitpick. It's just so good. It's so good. The characters, the fleshed out, did an awesome job. I mean, he turned a freaking Saw Viper into one of the most menacing, deadliest homicidal characters you could imagine, and that is a very like strange, like you wouldn't look at that toy and be like, that guy's menacing and badass. Turns out, yes, he is.
I think he did a really good job too of being forced to like integrate the new characters that he was given on a regular basis.
Yeah, I mean, think about how hard that's got to be for a writer, to constantly have them coming along and being like, well, here's the 10 new characters we need. And he did it because the way he did it, I don't know how intentional it was, or if it was like, well, I'm doing this anyway and I can kind of work this in. I'd love to ask him about this. He very politely declined an interview request when I met him. But I would have loved to have asked him about this. Like, there's issues where there'll be like 6 or 7 new characters, and it's usually like, it feels like the mission was suited to them, which is interesting because it's not like it'd be 6 or 7 new aquatic fighters. They wouldn't be Navy SEALs or something like that need to go do this Navy SEAL mission, but he'd make it work. Yeah. And it was just like how they would play along with each other. It's very, very interesting. How well he was able to make that work, because like you're talking about, like we mentioned with Transformers earlier, these are long running successful toy lines where they would just dump a bunch of new characters, and obviously they want that stuff integrated. And I feel like he had almost like an editorial type control where he could kind of be like, all right, well, I'm not going to make a huge deal out of this character. I'm not going to make somebody that I know Comic Tropes and I used to watch a ton of, was Hooded Cobra Commander 788, who did these awesome vintage G.I. Joe toy reviews for the Real American Hero line. And he'd always do like media appearances at the end of a review. And there's stuff you'd watch and you'd be like, oh, interesting. I kind of am trying to figure out how many issues of the comic book they were in, and because in my head, I don't remember them very well. And he'd point out like, this character barely appeared in the comic books. So it wasn't like, this brand new character came out in 1989 and it was this, big toy they wanted to sell, and it appeared in 10 straight issues where you saw this vehicle or you saw this character. No, it's a few panels and you can barely even see him or see who it is. And It feels like he was able to kind of tamp that down and be like, we don't need 6 new characters right now. Like, we'll show them once and there you go.
Just as long as they got their little moment in the sun.
Yeah. And then he would highlight some of those characters to amazing effect where it totally fit in with the story. Or like there's I'm blanking on the character's name. I want to say it might be Ghost, but he's the pilot of the stealth fighter, and nobody can ever remember his name. And stuff like that. It's just really great. Is it Smoke Elijah? Welcome to the show. Thanks for popping in. Take on the current Ultimate Spider-Man run. I'm about 5 or 6 issues in. I read most of my stuff on Marvel Unlimited, so I'm a little bit behind. It seems solid. I know a lot of people absolutely like praised it when it came out, and I really like it. I'm kind of waiting to see where it goes, probably because I'm a little bit farther behind.
Everybody that I hear, they say that it's the best Spider-Man title.
Yeah, and it's really good. I do feel like it's fresh. But I guess maybe it's there's like an action pacing thing where I want to see a little bit more action in it, even though there's been fights and stuff. I don't know. It's kind of one of those things that's the tone, not the tone, the pacing feels a little off to me, and I can't quite put my finger on it. But I like it. The writing's good, except for that. So, and the art's great.
The take I've heard is that it's, Marvel always kind of freezes certain characters in time in a certain place. This is Peter Parker as though he's moved on. He's able to marry Mary Jane. He's able to have a kid and everything else.
Yeah, I really do like how the universe itself is being built out is really fun. And I'm curious to see. That's part of what it is. I'm curious to see where they're going with the whole maker puppet string kind of universe kind of thing, because I feel like if the payoff sucks, it's going to be kind of all for nothing in a way. And I almost want it to just be its own thing that just lives and breathes on its own and doesn't have some overarching, villain plot line or whatever. They didn't use Ghost Rider because there was another character obviously with that name, but then the way he wove that into the story with them not being able to remember his name was fantastic. Like he took a roadblock there's a G.I. Joe character. He took a roadblock and turned it into a win. Oh, was there a blind Thundercat? Oh, I don't. I unfortunately, I think I only remember like the main 4 or 5 characters in Thundercats. Okay, I can only remember 3 characters. I remember Lion-O. Oh my gosh, I know that one of them has a name that's like a panther. One of them has a name that's like, is it Chitara and Panthro?
Chitara, Panthro, Lion-O, Wily Cat, Wily Kit.
Okay, Snarf, of course, I remember that.
Can't remember the other guy's name.
The bad guy?
Mum-Ra's the bad guy. And then Monkey-On and I'm drawing a blank on a few of them.
Tigro, okay.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so Ultimate Spidey did some big twists in the last couple issues. I need to get, that's one of the comic books that I think I read like the first 3 issues because they were out or whatever, and then I kind of put it on the back burner. I read like 2 or 3 more, and it's probably kind of a disjointed reading experience for me, which probably has a lot to do with it. You know what? Smoke Elijah, Comic Tropes is the GOAT. He's the GOAT. He does an awesome job.
He is the best. We love him.
Yes. Snarf. Well, I remember here's a fun story that has nothing to do with anything about Thundercats. You remember those, like in the late 80s and early 90s, they'd have like those licensed tents that weren't really good tents. They were like indoor play tents. They'd have like plastic frames.
Yeah. Tents. Mm-hmm.
So I had one of those, and I remember as a kid without like the modern adult strength, they'd have like those little like plastic receptacles you'd stick like the plastic stick in to like build the frame. And I remember having to like push down on one really hard. And I think I was using it like as a blowgun or something. I was 5 or 6 or something like that. And somehow I ended up like falling or whatever, and that little plastic piece, and like it hit the back of my mouth, like in my soft palate, and that hurt for like weeks, dude. Because pretty much all my weight landed on it, and it's like that dumb kid. Comic Tropes was saying he's a dumb kid in here earlier. That was my dumb kid moment. I was running around with a blowgun in my mouth, essentially, like not paying attention to where I was going. I did push it too hard. Snarf, snarf. There's probably some really clippable moments from some of the hand gestures I was just doing too. A huge manga exhibition just opened at the Museum of Pop Culture in Seattle. That's cool.
That's cool.
Linkso was the blind and oldest Thundercat alive. Oh, nice. Okay. Like when people mention these characters, stuff like that, that's starting to come back to me.
Wasn't like Jaga was like the elder guy that was like that gave him the sword and everything before they left?
Oh boy, I don't know.
I remember too much useless information.
Well,
and sometimes not enough.
It depends on the thing, because I mean, like, unfortunately, I was probably because by the time the 80s were over, I was 8 years old, just early enough that there's a few things I was obsessed with, like G.I. Joe, Transformers, Ghostbusters, which is something we didn't really. I mean, it's kind of movie to toy to comic, kind of in a weird way, but that's another one that I just kind of throw in here. I was obsessed with a few of those things. Thundercats for a little tiny bit, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for a teeny tiny little bit. But like by the time I was, coming out of that whole the legislation that allowed advertising to kids in TV and stuff like that changed, and kids TV programming changed quite a bit, and like the toys weren't quite as in your face, I guess. The marketing wasn't the same. I got more into sports. Some of that stuff changed, and I just didn't know about some of these things or forgot about them. But yeah, it's just kind of one of those things. Bigby, we are at basically the 2-hour mark. We had a great time talking about it.
We still got to do art and everything else. So
we got to do art. We never even talked about news. I gotta mention one other thing that's coming on the EXP tomorrow night at 10 Eastern, 9 Central. You can go check out Henri Compen on Kicking It with Henri. He does another claim sale show on the EXP. Highly recommend going and checking him out. He's a good dude, and he always brings like some stuff that I was like we're talking about toys tonight, where it's like, oh wow, memory flash. Like he'll bring out some stuff that I just forgot about with comics. I'm like, oh yeah. So he does a really cool job. I highly recommend going and checking out his show. Well, I mean, the thing about Thundercats is they were cats, and there was swords, and they were like in space for some reason. And there
was a guy who had a laser pointer, and he moved it around in the sky, and the cats chased it.
Having a little fun there. Yeah, he's got a lot of cheap books too. They're a very good point, Jay.
Oh, I enjoyed Thundercats. I thought Thundercats was a great TV show. The comics just didn't have enough of the comics, is the deal back in the day. There was a lot of great lore they could have had.
Yeah, in the new comic series has been pretty highly acclaimed. The Dynamite series, I do know that. I haven't read it yet, but I've heard a lot of good things. But look, what I will tell you about the Thundercats comic is because I was at that age where I probably wasn't really reading comics when I was getting my hands on those, but I was looking through them, and I remember they did, like, you got to see more of like oh gosh, what did they probably called it, like the Lion Castle or something. That's Voltron, but the Fortress, you got to see more of like the inside of it and stuff. I remember thinking that was really cool, because in the cartoon, you only get to see what's in the scenes, right?
Right.
Yeah, we did talk about Sydney Sweeney before the show, and we have something coming that I think you'll appreciate. We're working on something in the background, Richard. But yeah, well, we didn't invite you because it was a private party.
Sydney was there,
it was a special appearance. It was kind of like a cameo, but it was way more expensive. Yeah. That sounded really dirty for some reason. That's not like an OnlyFans kind of thing. That's not really what I'm trying to say. The Cat's Lair, says Jay.
Cat's Lair, that's right. Cat's Lair.
Oh, you're working on Saturday. Okay, that's too bad. Hey, when's your launch thing happening for Radiant Black, Chris? What was the date for that again? Because I know that's a day maybe I can try to come up and check out the event and we kind of promote it a little bit. Sydney Sweeney playing Emma Frost. That's a good fan casting. Out of the especially like a young Emma Frost or something like that. That's out of some of the ones I've seen. It's one of the better fits for her.
Sydney Sweeney playing the Baroness. I don't know.
No, maybe Cover Girl.
There we go, Cover Girl. There we go.
It is March 26th from 4 to 6 at Stargazer in Tacoma. I need to add that to my calendar. Is that New Comic Book Day? Yeah, New Comic Book Day, the last Wednesday in March. That's awesome. So uncover, Chris. Now you're talking my language. So for those that don't know, I didn't really mention it. Chris, if you haven't been watching the show, we talk about this pretty much every week because it's awesome. He has a backup story coming up in one of the Radiant Black comic books that he's doing 90% of the work on. And I can't wait to read it. That's really awesome. He said it's a good, I don't know if he was joking. I could see him joking about this. He said it's a good jumping on point for Radiant Black. Probably just because he's doing that issue.
It's definitely a good jumping on point if he's doing that issue.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to show community artwork because news stories we can kind of pick and choose. To our esteemed producer in the background, Jay, if you need to run at any point because we're taking a little too long, I know we're kind of going a little bit over, but we're not gonna explore all the news stories that we had ready to go for this week, but we are gonna hit the ones that are kind of time sensitive. Just letting you know, we understand if we're keeping you late. Okay, so here's the artwork. We're gonna go through this because I definitely don't want to forget any of these fine folks and their hard work. First up, we have Actual Dracula, who was in the chat earlier. I think he probably had to bail or he wasn't around. But I just wanted to show this off real fast. This is a good one that he sent in. This is also part of Murder King, which is the book that a few people in the community are working on. I think Bleecker Street Comics was the guy that headed it up, right?
Yeah, they're going to be doing a Kickstarter for it pretty soon. But
nice.
That's one of his pieces for that. So
if you guys want to check out a cool new comic book coming out, go follow their account, which is murder_king69 on Instagram, which is probably the best name ever. It's a little too bad that Murder King 68 was taken, so they had to go to 69, but hey, whatever. So yeah, Dracula's got some great artwork. We've been featuring it most every week that we talk about community artwork. We've been talking about some of his artwork. He's the reigning champion of the community art competition we run. Just some great stuff there. So definitely go check that out. Speaking of G.I. Joe, this is super appropriate. Dan Kelly sent in this amazing Sergeant Rock on a G.I. Joe. I think that's the G.I. Joe Skybound, or yeah, I think it's the Skybound blank cover they did. Just awesome. That's really good. Dan Kelly's an awesome artist.
That is really nice.
Hey, none of that slander on here, Richard. If he says he's an actual Dracula, we're gonna respect that. No, good job, Dan. Love it. This is Elliot Wright, who we've shared some pieces from before, doing Batman. Very awesome. Kind of more of a little bit of the Arkham Knight kind of Batman style with the armor segmenting there. Maybe I'm kind of reading into that too much, but did a really good job there. I like that. I like the all black on that color of cover is pretty nice.
He's so confident with his heavy black on there.
Yeah, that's a good point. Looks really good. Way better than that Daredevil CGI, right? This comes from Headless Hammerhead, who shared some pieces with us recently. He said this is from Nosferatu, and it might be a spoiler, is what he said in the comment. I haven't seen the movie yet, so if it is a spoiler, I'm really sorry, but it's cool artwork, and I really wanted to kind of share that he's been working hard on his art and does a lot of portraits and stuff like that too. So
Yeah, it's definitely from Nosferatu. I totally recognize that character.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I've been meaning to watch that movie, just haven't got a chance to it yet. It's been too busy all the time. Hey, here we got artwork from Norin, who was in the chat earlier, probably still maybe still lurking around and doing some art or something like that, which I know he commonly does. Doing some Absolute Wonder Woman. Love that.
Yeah, really cool.
It's kind of funny. I think this is the first fan art I've seen of Absolute Wonder Woman. And I think her design in Absolute might even be more fun to draw than her kind of regular costume at this point. It's very cool.
Right.
Nice job, Norin.
Yeah, beautiful.
This came from Rich Donkey. Sent this one in. Nice Venom. Very, very cool. I love what he's got going on here.
Love it.
Yeah. I don't know how to pronounce your last name. Maybe it's Stanky, but I didn't want to. I don't know which pronunciation you prefer there, Rich. But nice job on the art. Then we got Roscoe. This is it's got to be referencing DJ Links, right? Yeah, it even says on the shirt.
Yeah,
that's fun. DJ Links is a community member that's part of the trio that runs Comics Curing Cancer. If you're not familiar with him, definitely go check him out too. Very cool. And it got a little bit of the glasses likeness on there too. I like it. And then Side Quest Comics. He's okay, so it's a tank. Okay. I was trying to figure out what that was when I was looking at it when it was smaller. I'll kind of zoom in on that a little bit. Kind of picking his tooth with a tank cannon. That's pretty fun.
Yeah, they got a guy flying out of it.
Yeah. That's great. I like that. It kind of goes with our Shogun Warrior Godzilla talk we had earlier. Excuse me.
Right.
And then, yeah, that was okay. That was the last piece. So that's really nice. Hey, folks, if you want to have your artwork featured on our show, all you got to do is send it in to Bigby McFly or myself. Links to socials are down below in the description as well. So go check that out and send us your artwork. Doesn't matter if you're doing stick figures or if you're, published in a comic book coming out later this month. We'd love to see your artwork.
For sure. We just want to promote you and encourage people to draw.
Yeah. And eventually we'll send out prizes to the people who won the competition, because there is a competition. You're automatically entered. All you got to do is send in your artwork and we do a competition at the end of the year. And yeah, it'll be great. Next week, how about you guys shoot pizzas at one another? Very difficult to do. I can't throw a pizza more than a mile or two. It's probably where I get out.
Yeah.
With the wind, maybe 2.5 miles.
Maybe.
I
can see that. If you get it if it wasn't sliced like a Frisbee,
Yeah. That's really what's going to slow me down. Oh, I'm such a jerk. Close my million open windows I have from earlier here so I can show some of the news. Cowabunga. Oh yeah, so many from the pizza shooter. That's great. So I'm going to talk about kind of the main pieces of news. I have the liberty of being fully in charge here, so I'll just kind of make my choices on this. I think this is pretty big, so let's talk about this one first. Let me share this tab so I can just show you guys all these cool stories. We got a director attached to the Berserker movie, which is probably a pretty good one for this type of movie. It's Justin Lin, who's done Fast and the Furious, lots of crazy good stuff. One or both of the Aquaman movies, I think. Let's see if I give his catalog here, which I feel like I should have remembered, but maybe I don't. Okay, well, yeah, guess I'm either not seeing it or it doesn't. But yeah, he's done a lot of stuff. He's a good action director. It's also got a scriptwriter from the Batman 2 on the script. If you're not familiar with Berserker, Keanu Reeves teamed up with Ron Garney. I'm forgetting somebody else who's attached to that book now at this moment, but yeah, it's a kind of a book that felt like when it came out, it was designed to be adapted, kind of.
Right.
Matt Kint, okay, is the writer there. It looks like in the article, whose name I guess escaped me. Sorry about that. But yeah, Boom. I think is this their first? If this comes out first, I think it'll be their first adaptation that they've had come out, which is kind of funny because I feel like the joke about every Boom book is that it's designed to be adapted, and yet none of them have that I can think of. Yeah, I think this might be the first one. So, I mean, like, I think a lot of people thought Something Is Killing Children would probably be maybe one of the first adapted. But hey, it's really cool to see this moving forward. I feel like this was probably the ultimate vision. I will tell you that when I spoke to Ron Garney at Rose City Comic Con, he kind of alluded to this. So this was a while ago. I didn't feel comfortable saying anything because I didn't want to blow up his spot. It might be Kent. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I actually have never heard it said out loud. He's not getting any younger. Good point. Although he's he's a little bit like a Paul Rudd light. He's a little bit ageless. I don't know. It's kind of cool to see it. Hopefully it's a good movie. I feel like it's been a while in the making. And then along with this, I feel like this is just kind of 1A and 1B for news. McFarlane Toys, which, you know, kind of the big news with McFarlane Toys is that they just lost the DC license coming up. You know, they'll be taken over again by Mattel. But McFarlane's still putting out toys. He's still announcing new lines, including this Berserker toy, which is pretty cool. That's a much better likeness than the John Wick figure I had from like NECA or whatever. Once I realized it was just a terrible figure, once I got it open, but I wanted a cool looking John Wick figure. But hey, this is even a better, you know, if you can take that head off, you can probably use it for some kit bashing. Lots of guns and all kinds of fun stuff, and you know, battle damage chest, and yeah, it looks pretty cool. So I think that's pretty fun.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah. This, let's see, what do I want? Oh, I think this is cool. I'm just excited to watch this. This will be like an instant watch for me. Jack Kirby documentary is coming out. CBR is reporting on this one. So it's from acclaimed filmmaker Ricky Stern, who did the Joan Rivers A Piece of Work, which I've heard a lot of good things about. I haven't watched it yet. But it's also the Braun Brothers producing, which they did the Andy Warhol Diaries, which I didn't watch, but I did watch the Wild Wild Country, which was a very good documentary, true crime kind of style documentary, which might be a good one for you for what we were talking about earlier. If you haven't seen it, kind of Pacific Northwest based story. But hey, we're getting a documentary about Jack Kirby, and comic documentaries. I need to watch some of the more of the ones that are already out there, but they're so fun.
Yeah, I really liked the Mignola one I watched just recently. It was really good.
I've heard good things about the Dave Stevens one too. I need to check that out.
That is excellent.
But like, you know, the ones I have seen, they're always so fascinating to me. So I think that's really cool, and I can't wait to see more of that. It seems like Jeff Loeb is doing more and more these days in comics. He's working on the Hush 2 storyline with Jim Lee, which apparently was a huge selling comic. Hey, have a good night, Adam.
See you later, buddy.
Get some good sleep. Hopefully we could lull you to sleep with our dulcet tones. But this is kind of interesting. So Jeff Loeb's returning to the Age of Apocalypse era in a new giant size issue. There's been quite a bit of returning to the Age of Apocalypse. Like there's I guess it was an omnibus I read from Marvel Unlimited, or like a reading order thing, because I wanted to go back and reread all of the Age of Apocalypse stuff, and it kind of kept going past the original stuff to like the stuff that was written afterwards. I forgot how many like one shots or tie-ins, or there's stuff where like the Exiles go back, which I kind of remembered, but then there's just like these weird specials that came out. And it's just insane how many times they've actually kind of revisited it and kind of fleshed out the present and future of that universe. But hey, he's going back and revisiting this, which is pretty cool. I'm excited to see it. It's interesting to see Jeff Loeb, back in it so much. He kind of had an unfortunate event happen in his life that kept him out of it for a while. And then came back, and some people kind of, the impression I got, were not as thrilled with some of his work. But this is going to get me in. This is right up my alley. I'm going to read Hush 2 as well. So pretty fun stuff. Yeah. Hush 2 sold 400,000 pre-orders. That's pretty neat. And I did have an article pulled for that too. It probably is about the same, but we can check that out on CBR real fast, just since we're talking about it. And I love to talk about this stuff too, because we talk about problems the comic industry faces and kind of pitfalls it has, and when things go well, I want to make sure we highlight that too, since we do want to try to highlight the positive stuff that's going on.
Right.
Yeah, like Tropes was saying, he's dead on there. He probably reported this on his show earlier. I probably missed that segment. But Batman 158, which is the new sequel story arc launch, has over 400,000 pre-orders, which, I mean, that's a ton. If you're not familiar, that's a ton.
Right. That's way more than a normal issue.
Yeah. I mean, I think a good issue of Batman was, last time I looked, I want to say it was like maybe 100,000 or so. I don't know if it's even that high anymore. Maybe it's dipped down. But that was a few years ago. I'm telling y'all and Dan Wickline would make a killing releasing a sleep aid soundtrack of just the three of you talking. You know what we should do? We should have a stream of the three of us talking, and then we should just keep it going and tell everybody to tune in, and then they just keep watching all night long, and we get all those glorious YouTube views.
They fall asleep with their phone in their hand, right? There you go.
YouTube's like, "Are you still watching?" Like, damn right, I'm still watching. Speaking of Sydney Sweeney and Emma Frost, and speaking of, I hope I'm not wrong about this, but I want to say David Nakayama has a cover coming out. Yeah, he does. For this, I thought he did, which I mentioned earlier because Comic Tropes had him on his show. So this is also from CBR. Marvel is teasing a scandalous new Emma Frost series. So we talked about this when it was first announced. It's a 5-issue limited series. We are getting a little more detail about it, which is that it's taking place. I think this was an interview with Amy Chu talking about it, I believe. Yeah. Oh, no, sorry. The quote is from Amy Wu via Marvel Comics press release. But this is what it is, because Amy Chu's the writer on it. This is going to be a whole new Emma-focused story set in the classic days before she joins the X-Men. We're going around the world to expose the inner workings of the Hellfire Club in a way you've never seen before, and introducing some new baddies. I can't believe Marvel is letting me do this. It's so exciting.
Cool.
So, yeah, and that's exactly what I would want from if you're going to do an Emma Frost series. I think that's a great time period to explore in her past. So I'm excited because I kind of I miss kind of classic villain Emma Frost. And that's true, not just Emma Frost, who's one of my favorite villains, but so it's true for her. There's a lot of Marvel, especially X-Men villains that have kind of turned good, and I miss them as a villain every once in a while, right? Like,
right.
Outside of X-Men, I miss Venom as a villain sometimes.
Right.
But in X-Men, like, Juggernaut's on the X-Men now, and he's had a history of flirting around with that going back to Age of Apocalypse. White Queen. Sabretooth joined the X-Men for a while, although he's kind of firmly back in the villain camp. But it gets a little crazy. So it's nice to go back and revisit those villainous times sometimes.
Have you seen the trailer for Thunderbolts that highlights all of the different creative teams that are working in that movie?
You know what? I haven't, because I kind of went on media blackout for Thunderbolts.
That trailer. What now that I've seen like who it is that's working on that movie, I'm like, no wonder this movie looks so freaking good.
Nice. I kind of just decided like I'm so anticipating this movie, and my wife feels the same way. We're just gonna go watch it, and so now at this point I don't really need to see any more. So I've tried to like kind of not watch any of the new spots or trailers that came out, but I'm sure I'll end up seeing
this one. It's just like it just is like from the the creative director of this, from the and it just you're going oh okay, like all the things they're listing are like, oh yeah, I love that. So
nice. Real fast. I thought this was kind of interesting. So Star Wars had a new series come out, and it was called Jedi Knights. The interesting thing about this to me is I think some of the stuff about the toys in the 80s, where the movies were done because Return of the Jedi was out, and it was going to be a long time, for people that don't remember or too young to know this, it was a long time before we got more Star Wars content. Even books, and there was sporadic books and comics, but really not until the early 90s did you really start to see a ton of that stuff.
Right.
So there was this character named Atha Prime, and he was never produced as a figure, but it was basically like a designed prototype kind of thing. It's got a kind of a history, but he appeared in this book that came out on New Comic Book Day. And I think that's just kind of cool. I think it's kind of neat when we see basically characters that we never thought we would see finally come out. I'm trying to see.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
They have a good shot of him there. Yeah, that's kind of a good shot of him there. Sort of. I know it's kind of small on the screen, but it's just kind of neat. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many times where they've said canon, not canon, canon, not canon, and you're like, okay, am I ever going to see this character that I read about that I liked, right?
Well, and especially with Star Wars too, like a lot of the designs you've seen in the newer stuff, and people would say, oh, that's a really cool design. So much of that stuff either came from concept art that was made back in the day, or it came from like Kenner's unused prototypes, or their toys they came out with that were obscure, that weren't really based on anything. Like there's a Lego set based on a sand speeder, which is basically a snow speeder, but kind of in a tan color. And that was a prototype toy. I don't think that one was released. But for people that are into this kind of deep cut stuff, that's pretty cool. So I think that's kind of the main new stuff. There's a couple other things that are kind of interesting. One of them's about a new Batman series coming out. I'll just kind of tease that. We'll probably talk about it next week. This takes place in the Batman '89 Burton universe, which they've done before. This is kind of a continuation of that. They're introducing the Riddler and stuff, which would be the Jim Carrey version of the Riddler. There was also this thing where we talked about Severance, which is a show that we've been watching, and we won't get into spoilers, but there was a thing where Ben Stiller asked former President Barack Obama to be a voice guest star on that show. He said no very nicely in an email, but it would have been kind of fun. There's some other stuff too, but I don't think any of it's like we must dive into this and go for an extra 7 hours and talk about all of it kind of thing.
Got to leave some meat on the bone for next week.
Exactly. But yeah, we went through the main beats. Richard wants to know views about Kathleen Kennedy and Simon Kinberg. I think I briefly talked about this last week or 2 weeks ago with the kind of rumor about her being not fired, but like her retiring from Lucasfilm. When it comes to Kathleen Kennedy, she's been responsible for some really nice stuff that came out of Star Wars. And I think what I said was she's been the captain of the ship during that time. She's also been the captain of the ship for some really terrible things that came out of Star Wars.
Right.
My personal opinions aside about where Star Wars is at, I think most fans have not been happy with the direction that Disney Star Wars stuff is heading. I think that's pretty fair to say. I know there's exceptions to that, of course. And I'm somebody I've had things I've loved. Like I loved Skeleton Crew. I absolutely loved Rogue One. Rogue One, it's really difficult for me to say where it falls, but at times I've liked it more than some of the original trilogy films. And I'm a diehard original trilogy kind of person. I think that movie was done so incredibly well. The only real complaint you could have about it is that you can never get a sequel to it because, well, that sequel's already made and it's called A New Hope. And spoilers, most of those characters are dead at the end of that film. But then, hey, guess what we did get is a prequel to that, which is Andor, which was also amazing. Season 2 coming out. I think the last episode of Daredevil drops the first day that the new season of Andor season 2 drops, if that makes sense. So there's some great stuff. Simon Kingsbury, I'm not as familiar with what his role is and everything, but I just think it's complicated. I think a lot of people love to say like, oh, it's all Kathleen Kennedy's fault. That's like the easy scapegoat for a lot of people that are upset with things. And maybe some of it is. I don't know. My guess is that I think she has more to do with the business operations than the creative choices that are made, but she probably also has a hand in the creative choices and oversight too. So I know there's been a lot of like announced films that have been eventually canceled or scrapped. I definitely question the choice to make Rian Johnson the director of Last Jedi, which I think I've said this before, Last Jedi on its own, taken completely out of context from being part of the narrative of Star Wars, is an excellent subversion of expectation that has some gorgeous shots in it and some gorgeous scenes in it, but it is a terrible Star Wars film. That was kind of my jumping off point for a lot of that stuff. But yeah, it's complicated. That's kind of, I would say. Do you have any thoughts on that one, Bigby?
I would say like that. I think that some people are sometimes victims of the time when they're working. So like you look at a lot of the stuff coming out from Disney during that time period, and I don't think like she had 100% of control over the way that the direction the company was trying to go, with a lot of the politics and stuff that were going on in the movies.
Yeah.
And so I think they're victims of the time that they're working for the company. And so they become the whipping boy for the fans. So that being said, I'm sure they're not completely blameless, but we'll never know. We weren't behind the closed doors.
Yeah. I mean, only if the pitchforks have 3 tiny little lightsaber blades on the end of them, Richard, in which case, by all means. So you love Last Jedi. Interesting, Chris. Yeah, like I said, I think it's a wonderful film. I just don't think it's a wonderful Star Wars film. And it's one of those films this never happens to me. I actually had to go to the movie theater twice to figure out how I felt about it, because I walked out of the first viewing of it being just kind of in shock. And the second viewing, I think I finally decided I did not enjoy it as a Star Wars film. But the problem is there's some amazing stuff in that movie. I definitely could do a whole like podcast or something about that movie. I have complex and deep thoughts about it. As a lot of people do. Probably no one cares anymore in 2025.
You deep dive of something that came out that many years ago, right?
Yeah, actually, Norin, I have a large amount of respect, especially. So I'm a purist. I only watch the unaltered releases. So when it comes to that version of Return of the Jedi, I actually think that's a very, very underrated film. Empire is the popular choice that everybody picks as their favorite Star Wars film, and it's a really great film. Return of the Jedi is kind of underrated. People, they throw it under the bus with Ewoks, and they throw it under the bus with some of the other elements in that film. And there are some things that are kind of not as great about Return of the Jedi, but I think it's fantastic. really good film there. But yeah, Star Wars is complicated. It really is. And I think the only thing I'll say is when it comes to a company like Disney, kind of speaking to what Bigby's point was, when Disney acquired Star Wars and when Disney acquired Marvel, there were strong reactions from two camps. There was a lot of excitement and I try to always look in the positive side. I try to always be an optimist, but I always kind of prepare for the worst too. But when it comes to, they're going to have a huge budget. Okay, a lot of the rights issues, especially when Disney acquired the Fox stuff, you're like, okay, well, a lot of the rights issues are settled. The X-Men can come in, all this kind of stuff. That stuff got me excited. The stuff, the stuff that really, I was hesitant about is what everybody was saying at the time that was on the other side of the camp, which is like Disney's going to ruin Star Wars, Disney's going to ruin Marvel, and I didn't want to believe that at the time, but I do think that there is some truth to. At a certain level, and I'm not talking about the politics that everybody wants to get into when it comes to that company. I'm talking about they're beholden to their shareholders to a certain degree. They have to, in a lot of ways, play it safer. But the problem is if you play it safe with some of these properties, it's actually not always the smart choice.
Right.
Sometimes you need to take chances. You need to be a pioneer.
Right.
That's kind of how I'd put it. Yeah. And Luke, that's the thing, is Luke is my favorite character in all of Star Wars. And Last Jedi did him dirty. And he is between Return of the Jedi and Mando season 2 finale. That is kind of his peak, for sure. So, all right. Whew, that was a long show.
It was a long show, but it was a good show.
It was a good show. I know you probably got work in the morning.
I do too.
Yeah. So,
and I'm just going to sit with my fingers crossed because my phone keeps telling me that it's got 15%, and then it'll go up. And it goes up.
We should probably let you get some sleep. We should probably let our viewers get some sleep. The ones that aren't asleep already, and they're currently listening to us, and we can tell them all kinds of things that are going to happen in their dreams, like. Make sure you like and subscribe to all 3 channels, including Bronze Age Nerd, Bigby McFly, and the EXP. Make sure you tune into Best Coast Comics every week at 8 p.m. Pacific. Yeah, those are important things to do. Even if you're sleeping and you just have us on in the background, make sure you do those things. Absolutely. Also, pineapple and pizza is fine. Stop making fun of people that like it. And then to all the viewers that would be attracted to this in a dream, I hope you have dreams of Sydney Sweeney tonight. If you don't want to have Sydney Sweeney dreams, I hope you have dreams of whoever you want to have dreams about. But on that note, we should probably get out of here. We have a fun topic next week, which we can announce already because we've already got it decided. We'll be talking about the kind of the history, the art, our reaction, our impressions, kind of all of it around Jim Lee. We have a couple series that we've kind of, believe it or not, already launched. And this is a new series we're launching where it's we're going to kind of rotate in these topics. This one, we're going to look at a creator and kind of look at like what we liked about their work, their career, how it evolved over time, our memories of their work. Not necessarily like a deep dive into their history, but we'll go into that a little bit too. Just kind of what we appreciate about some of our favorite creators that we have in common. And there's a lot of them that we have a list of. Jim Lee was the most obvious one on that list to tackle first because we both love Jim Lee. So,
yeah, well, and tonight's show was part of a theme too that we have plans for too. So,
yeah, absolutely. So hopefully you folks are enjoying these topics. Last thing I'll remind everybody to do is if you can, if you're watching on the replay, please go ahead and leave us a comment, with any of your thoughts, the toy lines we missed. There's so many, and I know we probably could have covered some of those a little bit better, and some of it's down to our shaky memories of what those things were. But if you have good memories about any of those comic books that were based on those toy lines, we'd love to hear about it in the comments. Or if you have any ideas for shows you want to see us tackle or topics you want to see us talk about, please let us know there as well. We'd love to hear about that.
Well, we want to hear your favorite toys that inspired a comic line are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Any and all of the above, we'd love to hear about it. And if you have community artwork, make sure you reach out to us and share that so we can show it off on next week's show. All right. Well, everybody have a fantastic night. Get some good rest, and we'll catch you in the next one. Have a good night, everybody.
Join the party. Head over to our link tree to find all the links for everywhere the experience is all the time.